Chapter 1604. The 7,000 primal chaos ancestral saints immediately unleashed their most powerful attacks at the Heart of Ice. They all knew that, even with their combined strength, they would not be able to destroy the Heart of Ice. Moreover, they did not want to destroy the Heart of Ice. They only wanted to kill Gao in the Heart of Ice. Boom! Just as they unleashed their attacks, the Heart of Ice shook violently. What followed was an earth-shattering explosion. An incomparably terrifying aura was emitted from the Heart of Ice. It contained a terrifying, icy aura. Wherever it passed, the void was frozen into fine powder and shattered into pieces. Murong Yu and the others were shocked. It was not Gao who had broken through again, but the Heart of Ice had made its move. Or rather, it was Gao who controlled the Heart of Ice to make its move. Gao was already a high-level primal chaos ancestral saint, but he was only at the 8th level. Not long ago, he broke through a small realm and reached the 9th level of the primal chaos ancestral saint. If he broke through again, he would rush into the supremacy stage. Therefore, he could not break through in a short period of time. But just because he could not break through did not mean that his strength could not continue to grow. At this moment, seeing Gao make his move, Murong Yu and the others knew that Gao's strength was more than 10 times stronger than before. It was more than 100 times stronger. The people of the Sect of Ice are going to suffer a tragedy. In Hichu Luoshu, Murong Yu and the others were relieved, and a smile appeared on their faces. A cup of wine even appeared in Murong Yu's hand. He was ready to watch a good show. Indeed, with a swoosh, the terrifying aura drowned the peerless experts of the Sect of Ice. At this moment, Murong Yu and the others saw that the 7,000 peerless experts of the Sect of Ice were all covered in a layer of frost. Even the power they unleashed seemed to have been condensed in the void, unable to move forward. It was not even under their master's control. This shocked the people of the Sect of Ice, and they all involuntarily took a step back. And this was just the beginning. All of you, Gao roared from the Heart of Ice. An even more terrifying frosty aura rolled out from the Heart of Ice like a torrent, covering the Sect of Ice. A strong sense of danger rose in the hearts of the many peerless experts of the Church of Ice. One by one, they reacted quickly and retreated. At the same time, they pushed their power to the limit and formed a light shield to protect themselves. When they discovered that Gao was merging with the Heart of Ice, they had already given up on the joint defense of the light shield. It was precisely because of this that Gao's attack was so effective. However, while their reactions were fast, Gao's attacks weren't slow either. Crack! 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 Some of the peerless experts of the Ice Sect, who couldn't react in time, didn't even have time to form a protective shield before their bodies were frozen. A gust of wind blew past, and these people shattered into pieces. In fact, even their souls have been shattered. Another 1,000 peerless experts have fallen. In a great hall of the Ice Sect, extremely far away from the mysterious Frost secret realm, 1,000 soul jade slips suddenly shattered. Here, only about 4,000 soul jade slips were still intact. The remaining tens of thousands of soul jade slips had all turned into powder. These were the soul jade slips of the experts who entered the mysterious Frost secret realm. More than 5,000 primal chaos ancestral saints had fallen in a short period of time. The entire upper echelon of the Ice Sect was alarmed. They all knew where those people went and why they went. Could it be that they were besieged by some other sacred grounds? The people of the Ice Sect were shocked and incomparably furious. Unless it was an honorable or supreme weapon, it's impossible to kill 1,000 peerless experts at the same time. Moreover, the Heart of Ice is very secretive. No other force knows about it, a big shot said in a deep voice. Could it be because of the Heart of Ice? Everyone fell silent. They all knew how powerful the Heart of Ice was, but it was a little too powerful. It was beyond their estimation. We should send more experts over. This time, all of them must be high-level primal chaos ancestral saints, a big shot said in a deep voice. In fact, they had already sent out several waves of experts as reinforcements before this. and some of them were almost at the mysterious Frost secret realm. If Ian Gaohan couldn't fuse with the Heart of Ice quickly, he wouldn't be able to leave the mysterious Frost secret realm when more experts from the Ice sect arrived. After fusing with the Heart of Ice, Ian Gaohan's strength would increase by leaps and bounds, but he wouldn't be an honorable. No matter how strong he was, there was a limit, and once the high-level experts from the Ice sect arrived, he wouldn't be a match for them. Unless Yu Yangjia, a super expert who ranked 10th on the Saint rankings, joined forces, then there was no need to fear the Ice sect. The Ice sect was shocked, but they didn't know that someone else was even more shocked. In the depths of the primal chaos in the holy world, the surroundings were chaotic, but it was also quite lively with people coming and going. However, those who appeared here were at least rank 9 primal chaos ancestral saints. Because the pressure here was too great, only rank 9 primal chaos ancestral saints were qualified to survive here. Even rank 8 primal chaos ancestral saints will be greatly suppressed here, unable to exert their full strength. Moreover, this place was even crueler than the holy world. One careless mistake and they would be killed. Therefore, no rank 9 primal chaos ancestral saints would come here. It was fine because there was a heavenly saint steel here. This was an incomparably huge saint steel whose top and bottom couldn't be seen, shining with golden light. Just the golden light emitted by the saint steel illuminated the chaotic space within 100 million miles. But this wasn't the reason why everyone was here. The reason why so many experts appeared here was because this saint steel was the famous saint rankings in the holy world. Yes, the saint rankings, the most authoritative ranking in the holy world. Looking from afar, under the golden saint steel, 108,000 names shone with dazzling golden light. These 10 people represented the strongest experts in the holy world below the honorable realm. Countless peerless experts stared at the names on the saint rankings in awe. Even the names at the bottom were people they looked up to and envied. When will my name appear on the saint rankings? A rank 9 primal chaos ancestral saint from the Tiger clan suddenly sighed. Haha, with just you? Not even in your next life. The people on the saint rankings will only appear if their strength exceeds theirs. Otherwise, even if they die, their ranking will be empty. An expert from the Phoenix clan sneered. Although the expert from the Tiger clan knew that the expert from the Phoenix clan was speaking the truth, he was still a little angry. But just as he was about to make things difficult for the expert from the Phoenix clan, he saw the name at the bottom of the saint rankings shake. Ian Gaohan. The expert from the Tiger clan widened his eyes in disbelief, because he was very clear that the expert at the bottom of the rankings wasn't called Ian Gaohan just an instant ago. Moreover, Ian Gaohan wasn't among the 108,000 names. In other words, someone's strength had broken through and entered the saint rankings. This was big news. One had to know that this ranking hadn't changed for many eras. Even if there was a change in the rankings, it was only because the original people on the saint rankings had advanced or dropped. As for a newcomer entering the saint rankings, this was the first time. Sensing the change in the expert from the Tiger clan, the expert from the Phoenix clan also looked at the saint rankings. He was also stunned by what he saw. Apart from the two of them, there were even more people who reacted to the situation. A newcomer entered the saint rankings. In an instant, this news spread rapidly in this chaotic space and even back to the saint's world. Ian Gaohan, a disciple of the Infernal Society? A young expert flew over from afar. When he saw the name Ian Gaohan, he frowned slightly. Zheng He, one of the top experts of the true martial sacred hall, was extremely powerful. He was ranked 27,900 on the saint rankings. Although his ranking was at the bottom, his strength could instantly kill many peak chaotic ancestor saints. The 9 great sacred grounds were very clear about the disciples of the Infernal Society. Therefore, he recognized Ian Gaohan. However, there were too many people with the same name in this world. Now, no one could be sure that this Ian Gaohan was the Infernal Society's Ian Gaohan. So what if you entered the saint rankings? I can easily kill you. Zheng He sneered, his face full of disdain. Damn it, there are also people from the Ice Snow sect here. When they saw Yin Gaohan and the other two, they couldn't help but curse. He knew that the Ice Snow sect was fighting with the Infernal Society for the Heart of Ice. Now that Yin Gaohan had suddenly appeared and entered the Saint rankings, he must have gotten it. Look, Yin Gaohan's ranking is still rising. Someone near the Saint rankings suddenly exclaimed. Therefore, everyone's attention was attracted. They saw the name Yin Gaohan emitting a dazzling golden light as it continued to climb up the Saint rankings. In a few breaths' time, more than 100 experts on the Saint rankings had been trampled under his feet. Zheng Yi's face instantly turned ugly. Being able to enter the Saint rankings is already abnormal enough. Now, he even killed more than 100 people in one go. Who is this guy? How can his strength be so terrifying? One had to know that those on the Saint rankings were already at the pinnacle of the Saint rankings. It was extremely difficult for them to become stronger. However, Yin Gaohan's ranking was rising again and again. It was truly shocking. Could it be that he was going to break through to the Saint rankings? That was what some people thought. Yin Gaohan's ranking was still rising. In the end, when his ranking stopped rising, he had already reached 105,000. In half a day, he had killed 3,000 experts on the Saint rankings. Everyone was stunned. If this Yin Gaohan was really the Yin Gaohan of the Infernal Society, then 105,000 was definitely not the end, but the beginning. Then, was this Yin Gaohan the Yin Gaohan who was merging with the Heart of Ice? Chapter 16:05. When Yin Gaohan rushed into the Saint rankings, the mysterious Frost Secret Realm also underwent a tremendous change. In the beginning, Yin Gaohan controlled the Heart of Ice and unleashed an extremely terrifying aura of extreme coldness, killing some of the Ice Snow sex experts. However, although the extreme coldness was terrifying, it could not stop the attacks of the Ice Snow sect. In fact, the Ice Snow sect quickly came up with a countermeasure under his attacks. At the same time, their terrifying power continued to bombard the Heart of Ice. Although the Heart of Ice and Snow was extremely powerful, that was before it merged with Yin Gaohan. Before that, not to mention the 4,000 to 5,000 primal chaos ancestral saints of the Ice Snow sect, even if there were 10 times more, they would not be able to do anything to him. However, after the fusion, the Heart of Ice and Snow underwent some changes. It became weaker. In fact, this was a normal situation. If the Heart of Ice and Snow was still as powerful as before, Yin Gaohan would not be able to withstand it at all. His body and even his soul would be crushed. The weakening of the Heart of Ice and Snow was only temporary. As Yin Gaohan's strength continued to increase, the Heart of Ice and Snow would gradually become stronger, eventually recovering to its peak, or even stronger. This was not only the Heart of Ice and Snow, but also all treasures that recognized their masters. As the Heart of Ice and Snow weakened, the attacks it received naturally decreased. Naturally, Yin Gaohan also suffered a portion of the attacks. Moreover, as time passed, the number of attacks he received increased, and in the end, it exceeded the limit of what he could endure, and he exploded. It was unknown whether it was because of the rapid fusion with Yin Gaohan, or because the attacks it received were too terrifying, but the Heart of Ice and Snow became smaller and smaller. In the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong Yu and the others frowned slightly. Their hearts that had just calmed down were once again in their throats. This could be said to be a critical moment. Now, Yin Gaohan had nowhere to run, even if he wanted to. Because the Ice Snow sect's power had already sealed the void around the Heart of Ice and Snow. Even if Murong Yu could teleport over, the moment he appeared, he would suffer endless terrifying attacks. At that time, all of them might die because of this. And Yin Gaohan could not escape at this time. Now, Yin Gaohan could only fight to the end. If he could merge before he was killed, then he would not die. In fact, he might even kill the Ice Snow sect in one fell swoop. Rumble, the incomparably terrifying power, continued to cover the area where the Heart of Ice was, shattering it. However, the terrifying power couldn't conceal the increasingly powerful aura of Yin Gaohan. Yin Gaohan's strength continued to grow. At this time, his ranking on the Saint rankings was rising. Sensing the change in Yin Gaohan, Murong Yu and the others all smiled. As long as this continued, the final victor would definitely be Yin Gaoan. The Church of Ice was naturally aware of this. As a result, their attacks became even more violent. However, the damage they caused to Yin Gaoan was getting smaller and smaller. Right at this moment, with a bang, the heart of ice and snow trembled violently and then burst into pieces. It turned into a dazzling ray of light. At this moment, the eyes of the thousands of peerless experts of the sect of ice were dazzled. Even Murong Yu and the others could not escape the fate of being dazzled. Quick, kill him. Although they were dazzled, the Church of Ice still knew what to do. From the looks of it, the heart of ice seemed to have been fused with Yin Gaoan. As a result, they naturally did not have a share of the heart of ice and snow. Since they couldn't get it, they couldn't let others get it either. Moreover, after today, they had already shed all pretense of cordiality with the never-seen. It was either you die or I live. All the experts of the Church of Ice knew this principle. As a result, each and every one of them unleashed their ultimate moves. Yin Gaoan, who had just completely fused with the heart of ice and snow, did not even have time to leave his original spot before he was blasted by an incomparably violent attack. The experts of the Church of Ice all revealed a smug smile on their faces. So what if he had fused with the Church of Ice and Snow? He still couldn't withstand their full strength attack. Moreover, without the heart of ice and snow to dissipate their attacks, how could Yin Gaoan withstand their attacks with his strength alone? As a result, they all thought that Yin Gaoan was definitely dead. However, even so, they still began the second round of attacks. Even if Yin Gaoan withstood the first round of attacks, he would undoubtedly die under the second round of attacks. It's over. Murong Yu and the others in the distance all turned pale. They had no time to react at all. Even if they did, they wouldn't be able to rescue him in time. Even if they made a move, their strength would be of no help at all. Puff! However, to everyone's great surprise, after the first round of attacks, Yin Gaoan was not blasted into smithereens. Instead, he was bombarded to the point where he spat out blood and was sent flying backward. Moreover, before the second round of attacks landed, he had already escaped the attack range. He didn't die. When the power disappeared, Murong Yu and the others from the Church of Ice saw Yin Gaoan with a cold expression. Immediately, everyone was shocked. The Church of Ice was shocked, while Murong Yu's side was pleasantly surprised. Haha, looks like 13 Junior Brother's strength has skyrocketed. He actually withstood thousands of primal chaos ancestral saint experts and only suffered minor injuries. Hu Yinninghao laughed loudly. They all knew that after fusing with the heart of ice and snow, his strength would skyrocket. However, no one knew how much stronger he would become. If they knew that Yin Gaoan had not only entered the Saint King realm, but also reached the height of 105,000 in one go, they would probably be even happier, right? Church of Ice, you bunch of reckless fools. You tried to kill us more than once. Today, I'll let you know the consequences of provoking the sacred ground. The sacred ground isn't something trash like you can provoke. Yin Gaoan slowly rose into the air, and the extremely cold qi erupted from his body like a tidal wave, causing the surrounding space to freeze and shatter. 13th Senior Brother is going to show his might. I hope he won't disappoint us. Murong Yu looked at Yin Gaoan with shining eyes. At this moment, in his eyes, the power radiating from Yin Gaoan surpassed that of anyone present. Although it wasn't as good as Yu Yangjia and Old Yanglin, it was definitely stronger than anyone else Murong Yu had ever seen. Hu Yinninghao and the others also looked at Yin Gaoan with shining eyes. If Yin Gaoan was still weak after fusing with the heart of ice and snow, then all their efforts would have been in vain. Kill! Kill! Yin Gaoan and the many experts from the Church of Ice shouted and attacked almost at the same time. They attacked at the same time. Streaks of terrifying power were shot out by the many experts from the Church of Ice, and then condensed into a torrent of power in the void. Vast and mighty, it carried a terrifying power that tore the sky and earth apart as it strangled Yin Gaoan. Seeing this scene, Hu Yinninghao and the others couldn't help but feel a little worried. Only Murong Yu revealed a smile on his face. because he knew that even if Ian Gowon wasn't a match for these experts from the Church of Ice, he would have no problem keeping himself alive. Seeing those forces carrying a destructive aura coming at him, Ian Gowon's face revealed a touch of disdain. Then he slowly stretched out his hand and slapped down at the Church of Ice. I'll let you know what the power of extreme frost is. You're just displaying your slight skill in front of an expert. Before Ian Gowon's voice fell, a huge hand condensed from the power of extreme frost formed in the void. It blotted out the sky and covered the earth, covering a large part of the sky and the many experts from the Church of Ice. Then it ruthlessly slapped down. At this moment, the hearts of the thousands of experts from the Church of Ice were shrouded by an intense aura of death. Without any hesitation, they gathered their power and raised it to the limit. Then, they blasted towards the huge hand condensed from the power of extreme frost. Rumble. However, before their power could reach the huge hand, it was frozen by the power of extreme frost that erupted from the huge hand and finally exploded in a fine powder. Even the ancestral weapons and low-grade chaos ancestral weapons were frozen and then shattered. The power of thousands of peerless experts couldn't stop this huge hand at all. Unstoppable. The many experts from the Church of Ice revealed a horrified expression on their faces. Once again, they madly blasted out their strongest attack. At the same time, they also spread out their figures and fled in all directions. A good chance. Muronyu stepped out of the Hichu Luoshu, concealed his figure, and quickly rushed in that direction. Bang! The power of the many experts from the Church of Ice simply couldn't stop that huge hand. After an earth-shattering explosion, that huge hand had already slapped down. After a series of shrill screams, more than 2,000 experts who couldn't escape in time or couldn't stop it were slapped into tiny ice chips and exploded. They couldn't be more dead. Being slapped to death by Ian Gowon was like shattering ice cubes. Not even a drop of blood spilled. Soul Storm. Before the people from the Church of Ice who escaped the attack could breathe a sigh of relief, they heard a voice that scared them out of their wits again. At the same time, many people felt a pain in their souls. Then their vision turned black and they lost consciousness. Their souls had been blasted to pieces by Muronyu. At this moment, Ian Gowon's huge hand slapped down again. Muronyu also began the second round of attacks. Under the cooperation of the two, the thousands of experts from the Church of Ice were wiped out in a short period of time. Not a single one was left. That's it. Huyan Inghao and the others walked out of the Hichu Luoshu, each of them with a dazed look on their faces. The thousands of experts who originally had them covering their heads and scurrying away were actually swiftly killed by Ian Gowon and Muronyu. They were completely wiped out. One could imagine how terrifying the two's strength was. Especially Muronyu, who was only a peak Saint King, but when it came to killing Chaos Ancestral Saints, he was even more terrifying than them. This was a soul saint. Is the soul about to break through? Muronyu, who was collecting the spoils of war, suddenly flashed a smile on his face. Chapter 1606. No matter what cultivation technique it was, the more it was used, the more it would be improved. Even the soul was the same. In the past few days, Muronyu had frequently used soul attacks, allowing his soul to reach the peak of the first heaven of the 5 stars. Most importantly, he had killed many experts in the past few days. Although the souls of those people had been crushed, they had not completely disappeared. Their soul fragments still existed in this void. While attacking, Muronyu was also constantly devouring these soul fragments. After devouring and integrating these souls, Muronyu's soul began to strengthen. Many a little makes a mickle. Moreover, although the tens of thousands of Chaos Ancestor sages were not soul sages, their souls were extremely powerful. Although they were not a great supplement for Muronyu, the benefits were obvious. Now, Muronyu's soul was throbbing. Obviously, this was the rhythm of a breakthrough. With a thought, Muronyu immediately sat down cross-legged and began to cultivate. Anyway, there was no danger in the mysterious Frost secret realm. Moreover, Didn't Zhong Mingji and the others protect him? Is junior brother about to break through? Zhong Mingji and the others were a little surprised to see Murong Yu's scene. However, although they were surprised, they still stood guard at the side. Walala. After Murong Yu entered the state of cultivation, he began to devour the soul fragments around him with all his might. In the blink of an eye, the endless soul fragments floating around rolled over like a torrent and were finally devoured by Murong Yu's soul. In an instant, a gust of wind blew in the void around Murong Yu. Murong Yu's soul was rapidly improving. Yes, there is no change in his cultivation. It seems that junior brother's soul has improved. It was already so terrifying before. I wonder how powerful it will be now after the improvement. Lu Xiankai smiled, his eyes full of curiosity. The others were also very curious. After all, the power that Murong Yu had displayed before was really terrifying. Among them, only Yin Gaoan could withstand Murong Yu's attack steadily. The others were not 100% confident. The more they came into contact with him, the more they felt how terrifying the Soul Saint was. Fortunately, there aren't many Soul Sages in the sacred world. Otherwise, in the same realm, ordinary saints like us would be slaughtered by the Soul Saint. Wu Xinshui sighed. Zhong Mingji and the others nodded in agreement. Due to the fact that there were very few Soul Saints, there were very few saint artifacts and treasures that were related to the soul in the saint world. After all, only Soul Sages could refine Soul Saint artifacts. The others were not familiar with souls, so how could they possibly forge them? Therefore, when ordinary saints encountered Soul Saints, most of them would end up in tragedy. Boom! At this moment, an incomparably powerful soul aura suddenly erupted from Murong Yu's body. In an instant, apart from the saint-ranking expert, Yin Gaoan, the souls of everyone else trembled as they involuntarily retreated. The pressure was too strong. Under this aura, their souls couldn't help but tremble because they felt danger. If Murong Yu attacked, most of the people present would be severely injured. Of course, with their strength, if they defended with all their strength, it would be difficult to destroy their souls. 5-star, second heaven. After Murong Yu checked the level of his soul, he slowly opened his eyes as a smile appeared on his face. 5-star, second heaven soul. Murong Yu felt that his soul could already threaten a high-level primal chaos ancestor sage. If it was a sneak attack, even a level 9 primal chaos ancestor sage would be killed. After all, the souls of high-level primal chaos ancestor sages were almost as strong. The only difference was their strength. If there was no defense, the souls of level 7 and level 9 primal chaos ancestor sages would be easily crushed by Murong Yu. However, what made Murong Yu feel strange was that there were a total of 9 stars in the soul, which meant that there were 9 realms. He was only at the 5-star level, but he already had the strength of a primal chaos ancestor sage. What about the 4 stars after that? Could it be equivalent to a sovereign or even a sovereign? If his soul could reach the 9-star level, he would have the strength to go against a sovereign. If that was the case, there was nothing to fear about a sovereign in the sacred world. However, this was only the most ideal idea. Murong Yu knew that the soul sage was so heaven-defying that it would be harder to improve in the later realms. Murong Yu didn't even know when he would be able to reach the 6-star level, let alone the 9-star level. Junior brother, your soul is getting stronger and stronger. Although you're still a peak sage ruler, you're already on the same level as many primal chaos ancestor sages. Seeing Murong Yu stand up and stop cultivating, Hu Yininghao and the others walked over. Hu Yininghao patted Murong Yu's shoulder and said. Murong Yu shook his head with a look of pity. It's a pity that my cultivation didn't break through this time. A peak sage ruler is still too low. Hearing this, Lu Xiankai and the others almost vomited blood. Was this guy really finding it a pity? Or was he discouraging them? Just the breakthrough of the soul alone made them feel extremely pressured. If Murong Yu's cultivation also broke through to the ancestor sage realm, Lu Xiankai and the others found that although they were also peerless geniuses, compared to Murong Yu, it was better not to compare. In comparison, What else was there except for looking for a beating? Yes, looking for a beating. In the future, never ask about his cultivation, realm, and even more so, don't ask about his cultivation time. Yes, that's it. Huyanninghao and the others all had such thoughts in their minds. They didn't want to be beaten by Murong Yu too often. Eldest senior brother, now that 13th senior brother has successfully merged with the Heart of Ice, I'm afraid he's already on the Saint rankings. And the Ice Snow cult's reinforcements have probably arrived at the mysterious Frost secret realm. Are we just going to leave like this, or what? Murong Yu looked at Zhong Mingji and the others and asked, "What do you think?" Zhong Mingji didn't answer immediately, but looked at the others. "What do you think?" 13th junior brother and youngest junior brother's strength have improved a lot. It's time to let the Ice Snow cult know that the Infernal Society is not something they can provoke. Hu Yininghao said with a gloomy face and murderous aura. The others also nodded. This time, they could be said to be very sullen. If not for Murong Yu's arrival, Yin Gaohan definitely wouldn't have been able to merge with the Heart of Ice. And if Yin Gaohan hadn't merged successfully at the critical moment, Yin Gaohan would definitely have been killed by the Ice Snow cult. The Ice Snow cult didn't put the Infernal Society in their eyes at all. Although the Ice Snow cult was completely annihilated this time, the Infernal Society won. But once this matter spread out, wouldn't anyone be able to step on the Infernal Society? Who would give face to the Infernal Society's disciples in the future? Wouldn't the Infernal Society's disciples be on par with ordinary factions no matter where they went, or even worse? This kind of thing must be stopped. Offending the Infernal Society wouldn't be forgiven just like that. Kill. We must kill all the Ice Snow cult's reinforcements. Yin Gaohan's eyes flashed with a cold, murderous aura. Murong Yu shook his head with a smile, but his smile was very, very cold. So, Zhong Mingji and the others all looked at Murong Yu. I feel that just killing the reinforcements isn't enough to show the ferocity of our Infernal Society. Since the Ice Snow cult wants to kill all of our Infernal Society's disciples, we can't let them go. We can't be courteous with them. I suggest that we wipe out the entire Ice Snow cult. Hiss! Everyone couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Murong Yu was really ruthless. However, just as Murong Yu said, they were just returning an eye for an eye. It's true that our Infernal Society hasn't appeared in the world for too long. This time, we'll let the world know the strength of our Infernal Society. Not just any Tom, Dick, or Harry can ride on our Infernal Society's head. Zhong Mingji pondered for a moment, a cold glint flashing across his eyes. So, everyone quickly left the mysterious realm of mysterious frost and hid at the entrance of the realm. Junior brother, thank you. Yin Gaohan, who had been indifferent and didn't like to talk, came to Murong Yu's side and thanked Murong Yu. He knew that if it weren't for Murong Yu, he wouldn't have been able to fuse with the Heart of Ice. It could be said that it was all thanks to Murong Yu that he had today. Although he was usually indifferent, not good at talking, and not good at expressing his feelings. But he still remembered Murong Yu's gratitude deep in his heart. Murong Yu shook his head. We're fellow disciples, brothers. This is what I should do. Murong Yu didn't care at all. Yin Gaohan's indifferent face revealed a smile. Junior brother, I'll remember your kindness. From now on, your matters are my matters. 13th junior brother usually doesn't make any promises. But this time, he actually made such a promise to junior brother. That's really rare. Lucien Kai was a little surprised. At the same time, he was even more curious about how useful the Heart of Ice was to Yin Gaohan. Murong Yu laughed. If I encounter any trouble in the future, I'll definitely come to you for help. You're now an expert on the Saint rankings. With such a powerful fighter like you, what else do I have to worry about? Everyone shook their heads and didn't comment on Murong Yu's words. If this guy was really that kind of person, he wouldn't have never asked them for help. All right, the people from the Sect of Ice are coming. Once they all enter the mysterious Frost secret realm, we'll attack and kill them all. At this moment, Zhong Mingji's voice suddenly sounded in everyone's ears. Thus, Murong Yu and the others fell silent and looked ahead. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. One after another, figures flew over from afar. smashing through the void and flying over. In the blink of an eye, they appeared at the entrance of the mysterious Frost secret realm. 20,000 peerless experts. The sect of ice only had 20 to 30,000 peerless experts, and now they were almost all out. It could be seen how important the heart of ice was to them. Chapter 16:07. 20,000 peerless experts. In addition to the tens of thousands of peerless experts that were killed previously, the peerless experts of the Ice Snow sect were probably all here. It was estimated that at this time, there were not many experts left to guard the Ice Snow sect's lair. At this time, if they attacked with their peak strength, the Ice Snow sect's lair might be destroyed. However, the Ice Snow sect took the risk of their lair being destroyed to come out in full force. They would not give up until they got the Heart of Ice. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Without any hesitation, the peerless experts of the Ice Snow sect rushed into the mysterious Frost secret realm. However, only about 10,000 of them entered the mysterious Frost secret realm. The other half firmly surrounded the entrance of the mysterious Frost secret realm. His enormous divine thoughts covered the entrance of the mysterious Frost secret realm like a vast ocean. Once they found something wrong, the terrifying power of tens of thousands of peerless experts would come crashing down. That way, even the experts on the Saint rankings would not be able to stop them, because these peerless experts were different from the ones that were killed by Murong Yu and Yin Gaoan. The weakest among them were mid-level chaotic ancestral saints. There were even quite a number of high-level chaotic ancestral saints. Their combined strength was dozens or even hundreds of times that of the previous 10,000 peerless experts. These guys are quite cautious. Murong Yu smiled as he transmitted his voice to Zhong Mingji and the others. Hidden in the void, he did not look nervous at all. On the contrary, he looked relaxed. The current situation was different from before. Previously, because Yin Gaoan was still in danger, they had to be on tenterhooks. But now, no one on their side was in danger. Even if they were no match for the Ice Snow sect, they could just leave. There was no pressure at all. Junior brother, do you think we should kill these people outside first, or those inside the secret realm first? Yin Gaoan transmitted his voice to Murong Yu in a negotiating tone. The two of them were the main force in this ambush of the Ice Snow sect. They must cooperate well to wipe out the Ice Snow sect in one fell swoop. Kill the people outside first, then catch the turtle in the jar, Murong Yu said faintly. Yin Gaoan also nodded slightly. Murong Yu's thoughts coincided with his. 13th senior brother, let me give them a soul storm first. The moment I make my move, you make your move. That way, we can cooperate well and kill them all in one fell swoop. Murong Yu transmitted his voice, and then his figure was already shuttling through the void. The reason Murong Yu made the first move was because of his soul attack. These people were all peerless experts, and their reaction speed was extremely fast. Murong Yu's soul storm would definitely be able to kill a portion of them. And when these people reacted, they would have of their strength, of soul, of ice, of their powers. Of their soul, of their of course. Before soul, of their, soul, of their, of there, of there, of there, of there, of there, of sect. The of there, of there, of there, of there, of there, of them, of Murong Yu's precepts of space were getting more and more powerful. After turning invisible and shuttling through the void, none of the peerless experts of the evasive sect discovered him. Even if they did, they wouldn't care. Soul storm, soul storm, soul storm. Murong Yu went to the rear of the evasive sect, just enough for his soul attack to cover all of them in the void. Without any hesitation, he launched his attack. The reaction speed of these experts, who were at least mid-stage chaotic ancestor saints, was indeed abnormal. When Murong Yu made his first move, the souls of these people began to tremble. Their hearts were also shrouded by an extremely strong aura of danger, even the aura of death. Everyone's expression changed instantly. They immediately concentrated their power in their soul space to protect their souls. Some of them even blasted out a terrifying force into the distance, try to shake the sneak attacker out of the void. Bang, bang, bang. Almost by the time they reacted, the incomparably violent soul attack had already blasted down. Therefore, the souls of the of Ice Sect's experts immediately suffered an incomparably terrifying bombardment. Some mid-stage chaotic ancestor saints who reacted a beat slower let out a series of blood-curdling screams. Their souls were directly annihilated, and they couldn't be more dead. Although the rest of the mid-stage chaotic ancestor saints reacted a lot faster, their souls were still severely damaged. However, his soul had still received a strong impact, and he had been injured both lightly and heavily. The high-stage chaotic ancestor saints who took action suffered less damage to their souls. After all, they were so powerful that they could block most of Murong Yu's soul attack. However, even so, their souls were still impacted. For a moment, they were shaken into a daze. Moreover, the most terrifying thing was that waves of incomparably violent soul attack came down endlessly. They could only protect their souls. At this moment, Ingaon also made his move. An energy condensed from the force of extreme frost that blotted out the sky and covered the sun appeared out of thin air above the Church of Ice. Carrying a terrifying aura that chilled the hearts of many peerless experts, it shattered the void and viciously slapped down. Moreover, what was even more frightening was that the threat of this powerful hand seemed to be even greater than Murong Yu's soul attack. The expressions of the peerless experts of the of Ice sect changed abruptly. One by one, they could not help but separate a part of their power and blast it towards the rapidly slapping hand. For a moment, all sorts of holy light shot out. All sorts of saint artifacts and magic treasures erupted with extremely terrifying pressure. They either slammed towards the huge hand of power viciously, or hovered in the air above their heads and sent down strands of energy to protect them. Or they simply transformed into all kinds of armor to protect their bodies. There were many more. Boom! Although it took a long time to describe, in fact, all this happened in the blink of an eye. After an earth-shattering boom, the giant hand had already slapped down rapidly. Boom! Crack! Instantly, countless forces, sacred weapons, magic treasures, and even peerless experts were first frozen, then shattered into ice shards. With just this palm alone, Ingaon had smashed at least 3,000 peerless experts. And Murong Yu's soul attack had only annihilated several hundred peerless experts. The gap between the two was obvious. However, the biggest gap was between the peerless experts of the of Ice sect and Ingaon. Ordinary chaotic ancestor saints, even if they were 9th-level chaotic ancestor saints, were far from being a match for experts on the saint rankings. They were just chickens and dogs. An expert on the saint rankings killing a 9th-level chaotic ancestor saint was as simple as a chaotic ancestor saint killing an ancestor saint. Although there were a lot of them, it was only a matter of time. One palm slapped 1/3 of the experts to death. Some of those who did not die were severely injured. In fact, their bodies were even frozen. For a moment, they were unable to move. As for Murong Yu, he took advantage of this opportunity to unleash his most violent soul attack. Poof, poof, poof. After a few rounds of attacks, another 1 to 2,000 peerless experts were killed. And at this time, Ingaon also made a powerful move. Under the cooperation of Murong Yu and Ingaon, the 10,000 peerless experts of the of Ice sect were wiped out in less than 10 breaths of time. Damn, this is too terrifying. Zhong Mingji and the others who were hiding in the surroundings did not even have the chance to make a move before the of Ice sect was completely wiped out. This made them rather speechless, but more than that, they were shocked. This was the power of experts on the saint rankings. This was the power of a soul sage. With the cooperation of Ingaon and Murong Yu, they could easily kill anyone below the saint rankings, no matter how many there were. Killing gods. Lu Xiankai sighed, and the others were also shocked. The of Ice sect is really blind to provoke us, the infernal society. Everyone was sighing. Senior brother Yin Gaoan is already so powerful. Then how powerful is fourth senior brother who is ranked 10th on the saint rankings? And how terrifying are the supremes above the saint rankings? Wu Xinshui suddenly said. Everyone's heart skipped a beat as they woke up from their ecstasy and shock. Don't be fooled by how they easily wiped out the experts of the Avice sect, as if they were slaughtering chickens and dogs. But if there were experts ranked higher on the saint rankings, killing them would be as easy as snapping a finger. Not to mention, there were supremes at the very top. With the strength of a supremes, they could probably kill experts of Yin Gaohan's level in one breath, right? As for Murong Yu, he was even more unbearable. He only had an excessively powerful soul attack. And if he encountered a peerless expert who was not afraid of soul attacks, Murong Yu would have problems protecting himself, let alone killing the other party. In fact, the foundation of the Avice sect was still not enough. Although it was a pinnacle force, there were still too few top experts. There were less than 109th stage chaotic ancestor saints. As for the high-level chaotic ancestor saints, they were at most 7th stage. Most of them were middle, 4th, or 5th stage chaotic ancestor saints. This also proved how difficult it was to break through to the chaotic ancestor saint realm. Without collecting the spoils, Murong Yu and Yin Gaoan entered the mysterious realm of mysterious frost at the same time. Under the cooperation of the two, none of the 10,000 peerless experts of the Avice sect who entered the mysterious realm of mysterious frost escaped. Total annihilation. At this point, except for a few peerless experts who were guarding their base, almost all of the peerless experts of the Avice sect were dead, and there were at most 100 or 200 people guarding their base, which was equivalent to a large force. In just a few days, the pinnacle force of the Avice sect fell and became a large force. Moreover, Murong Yu did not intend to let them go. He believed that in a few days, the Avice sect would be completely removed from the holy world. And all this was because the Avice sect was audacious and blind to want to kill the Seamless sect's disciples. This was the result of provoking the Seamless sect. Chapter 1608. Haha, I won't make a loss this time. After collecting the spoils, Murong Yu couldn't help but laugh out loud. This time, they had killed 30,000 chaotic ancestor sages. Although not all of them had chaotic ancestor sages, even if only 1/3 of them had chaotic ancestor sages, it was still 10,000 chaotic ancestor sages. Even after deducting some of the destroyed chaotic ancestor sages, Murong Yu had about 10,000 chaotic ancestor sages. Moreover, there were also valuable treasures in the spatial treasures of these unparalleled experts. Added together, they were even more valuable than 10,000 chaotic ancestor sages. One must know that Murong Yu had at most used 10,000 chaotic ancestor sages to set up the formation. Just these things that he had obtained now had already surpassed the value of those chaotic ancestor sages. Moreover, Murong Yu's soul had broken through from first heaven of 5 stars to second heaven of 5 stars. Moreover, after devouring 20,000 chaotic ancestor sages' soul fragments, Murong Yu's soul had already reached the peak of second heaven of 5 stars and was only one step away from breaking through to third heaven of 5 stars. Devouring the souls of experts could accelerate Murong Yu's soul realm breakthrough. However, only unparalleled experts in chaotic ancestor sages' realm had this effect now. Moreover, if there were not many of them, the effect would not be obvious. Murong Yu felt that if there were a few thousand more unparalleled expert souls, he could break through to third heaven of 5 stars. However, where could so many unparalleled experts be killed by him? Even if there were so many unparalleled experts, there would not be such an opportunity like today. It was a complete massacre. Wanted to break through to 9-star level of Soul Realm was really a long way to go. In fact, it was also because Murong Yu had merged with the Soul-Devouring Pearl previously. If not for the Soul-Devouring Pearl's ability to devour souls, Murong Yu would not be able to devour these soul fragments at all. Naturally, it would be even more difficult for his soul to break through. This time, Yu contributed the most. Therefore, Zhong Mingji and the rest did not want these spoils of war. They only took some pills, saint veins, and other treasures that could replenish their strength. Yu was not pretentious. He had a huge shengzhen waiting for him to raise. Thus, in line with the principle that no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. He didn't refuse any of them and took them all. Go. Annihilate the Church of Ice in one fell swoop. Raid his house. Hu Yinninghao laughed heartily. He was the first to soar into the air and flew in the direction of the sect of ice. In less than a day, Yu and his party appeared outside the Church of Ice. This is the Ice sect. Yu had a puzzled look on his face when he saw the large faction with only a handful of people. Zhong Mingji and the others were speechless. There were tens of thousands of primal chaos ancestral saints at their peak strength. If the disciples of other realms were included, there would be at least a few 100 million people. Holy lands like True Martial Temple had at least billions of disciples, or even tens of billions. However, there were very few top experts. The Church of Ice in front of him, on the other hand, was only a couple of big cats and little kittens, definitely less than 1,000 people. Moreover, these people weren't very strong. They don't seem to be disciples of the Church of Ice. Li Xinyan asked curiously. Immediately, Yu and the others in the void looked down. These hundreds of people who were shuttling back and forth in the Church of Ice all exuded different auras. However, none of them had the aura of cultivating the ice cultivation method of the Church of Ice. All the disciples of the Church of Ice cultivated the cultivation method of the Church of Ice. Therefore, the aura exuding from each of them was the same, ice. Moreover, apart from not exuding the power of ice, these people's clothes were not uniform. Their strength was uneven, and the highest was only an Empyrean saint. At this moment, they were constantly shuttling back and forth in the Church of Ice, as if looking for something. The Church of Ice was in a mess. Could it be that the people of the Church of Ice have all escaped? Shimin Ningming frowned slightly and said with some uncertainty, "Escaped." Yu and the others were taken aback, and then they all laughed. Shimin Ningming's guess was very likely, because they had almost killed the top experts of the Church of Ice in the mysterious Frost Secret Realm. Those peerless experts must have left soul jade slips in the Church of Ice. And after discovering that those people had all fallen, wouldn't the disciples of the Church of Ice be scared witless? Since the 20 to 30,000 experts had been killed, the rest of them would be killed as well, even if those people didn't come to kill them. But the Church of Ice used to be domineering and had many enemies. Knowing that the Church of Ice had fallen overnight, their enemies would definitely hit them when they were down and take the opportunity to wipe them out in one fell swoop. Naturally, they wouldn't wait for death here, so they could only choose to escape. Sure enough, their guess was soon confirmed. When they arrived, the people shuttling back and forth in the Church of Ice gave them the answer. A few days ago, the people of the Church of Ice had indeed escaped. One by one, they panicked. It was because they knew that the people of the Church of Ice had escaped that they dared to enter here to plunder treasures. However, what made them depressed was that the Church of Ice didn't even leave behind a single elixir except for some buildings. Shameless. Truly shameless. How dare they take away all our treasures? Hu Yinninghao roared with righteous indignation, his face full of displeasure. The hundreds of people looked at the furious Hu Yinninghao in disbelief. Those things originally belonged to the Church of Ice, so it was normal for them to take them away. How did they become this big black man's treasures? How despicable. If we knew, we would have hurried over. Wu Xinshui also looked depressed. That might not be the case. Yu chuckled as he looked ahead, his eyes flickering with light. Little junior brother, what did you find? Could it be that the Church of Ice still has a hidden treasure vault? He scanned with his divine telekinesis. The treasure vault of the Church of Ice had long been emptied. Not even a single elixir was left. Those people of the Church of Ice were too despicable and straightforward. Yu nodded, took a step, and disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already in front of a cliff at the back of the Church of Ice. Little junior brother, is there some kind of mystery here? Hui and Inghao and the others looked at the incomparably smooth stone wall, confused. In their view, it was just a stone wall without any mechanism or restriction. Even the expert on the saint rankings, Yin Gaohan, didn't notice it. Murongyu had a smile on his face, so it was normal that Yin Gaohan and the others didn't notice it. He almost didn't notice that there was another mystery in front of the cliff. When he arrived at the Church of Ice, Murongyu's enormous divine telekinesis enveloped the entire Church of Ice. If it weren't for the sudden tremor in the space here, he wouldn't have noticed that something was amiss. After some inspection, he found that the void in front of the cliff was a little different. Although the faint fluctuations were similar to the surroundings, it still felt a little out of place with the surrounding space. "Break for me!" Murongyu roared in his heart, and directly tore the void in front of him. Rumble! The space was torn apart, and then a hole the size of an ordinary person appeared in the sight of Murongyu and the others. There really is a mystery here? What kind of formation is this? Hui and Inghao and the others were astonished. Murongyu shook his head. This isn't a formation, but the pinnacle of the law of space. Using the power of space, this place is completely hidden. If it weren't for my understanding of the law of space, I wouldn't have discovered this place at all. In fact, Murongyu was being modest. If it weren't for his mastery of the law of space, he wouldn't have discovered the anomaly here. However, if the Church of Ice had such an expert, then why didn't the other party display his might before? Could it be the leader of the Church of Ice? This thought suddenly flashed through Murongyu's mind, and then he was taken aback. "Senior brother, did we kill the leader of the Church of Ice?" The leader of the Church of Ice? Everyone was taken aback. They had killed a lot of people, so they didn't know if the leader of the Church of Ice was inside. Or rather, even if the leader of the Church of Ice was inside, they wouldn't know. However, Murongyu had a feeling that perhaps the Church of Ice hadn't been killed yet. Otherwise, who would have the courage to empty the treasury of the Church of Ice? If it weren't for the leader of the Church of Ice, the Church of Ice wouldn't have evacuated in just a few days. That's right, evacuate, not flee. So many peerless experts have been killed. If they continue to cause trouble, we'll just kill them. What do we have to fear? Hui and Inghao said indifferently. At the same time, he took a step forward and was about to rush into the cave entrance. However, he was stopped by Murongyu. Hui and Inghao looked at Murongyu with some confusion. The cave entrance was wide open, and he didn't sense any formation, restriction, or the like at all. Murongyu shook his head, took out a low-grade Chaos Ancestral artifact, and threw it in. Chi! The Chaos Ancestral artifact was less than 10 feet into the cave entrance when a ball of dazzling white light suddenly burst out of the cave. In less than an instant, the Chaos Ancestral artifact was crushed by the white light. In the end, not even dregs were left. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, including Ingaon. And Hui Inghao was so scared that he broke out in a cold sweat. Although he was a high-level Chaos Ancestor Saint, his physical body was definitely not comparable to the Chaos Ancestral artifact. Even if he had the strength to defend himself, how long could he last? Moreover, what exactly were those white lights? Hui and Inghao had a feeling that these white lights weren't as simple as they seemed. Suddenly, everyone felt a chill run down their backs and looked at each other in dismay. Murongyu also frowned slightly because he felt that those white lights didn't seem to be formations or restrictions. If they were formations or restrictions, he wouldn't be afraid. However, if they weren't, then Murongyu wouldn't dare to rashly enter. Moreover, Murongyu also felt that this cave didn't seem to be the treasury of the Church of Ice. It might not even be the handiwork of the Church of Ice. Chapter 1609. Easily annihilating a Chaos Ancestral artifact. This had already exceeded the capabilities of the primal Chaos Ancestral Saints, and even experts on the Saint rankings. It was at least the capabilities of a supremacy. Furthermore, this was only a fleeting display of power. Murongyu was even certain that this wasn't the final display of power. Moreover, what other dangers were there in this strange cave? But no one knew. If not for Murong Yu throwing in a chaos ancestral artifact, he wouldn't even have sensed the danger in the cave. Fortunately, Murong Yu was cautious by nature. If he had entered rashly, he would have been killed immediately. Looking at this strange cave, Zhong Mingji and the others were silent. However, Hu Yininghao's heart was still thumping vigorously. He still had a lingering fear in his heart. This strange cave was so deep that the bottom couldn't be seen. From afar, it looked like the bloody mouth of an ancient ferocious beast. The more one looked at it, the more terrifying it was. This is definitely not the work of the Ice Snow cult. Could it be the work of a supremacy? Lu Xiankai frowned slightly and said hesitantly, "So what if it's the work of a supremacy? With our current strength, we don't have the ability to get to the bottom of it." 13th junior brother, are you confident? Zhong Mingji looked at Yin Gaoan. Yin Gaoan nodded. He didn't know if it was because he was the strongest, but he felt an intense aura of death from this cave. He knew that if he entered rashly, his fate would be no different from that chaos ancestral artifact. What a pity. Everyone shook their heads. Even Murong Yu was no exception. If this place was the work of a supremacy, there might be various treasures left behind by a supremacy. However, even if there were treasures, it had nothing to do with them if they lost their lives. Let's go back first. Murong Yu pondered for a moment and suggested. After pondering for a moment, Murong Yu also didn't have any confidence, so he decided not to take the risk. Thus, everyone turned around and was about to leave. However, right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. Swoosh! The inexplicable cave, which was originally calm and tranquil, suddenly burst into white light. A glaring light shot out from the cave and directly attacked Murong Yu and the others. They actually wanted to kill Murong Yu and the others. Murong Yu was the last to react, as well as the first to do so. The first thing he did was to travel through the void and leave this place. But at this moment, he suddenly paused and slammed his palm into the cave. He wanted to shatter the white light. However, what shocked Murong Yu was that before the power of his slap could reach the white light, it had already disappeared without a trace. In the blink of an eye, the white light exploded and wrapped around Murong Yu before he could react. Then, with a swish sound, the white light dragged Murong Yu and disappeared into the depths of the unknown cave. After Murong Yu disappeared, the cave that looked like the bloody mouth of an ancient beast also disappeared into thin air. At this moment, Zhong Mingji and the others finally reacted. Junior brother, Yin Gaohan was the strongest and was the first to react. He exclaimed and reached out his hand to grab Murong Yu. However, Murong Yu had already disappeared. However, he only managed to grab onto the stone wall of the cliff. The terrifying power erupted, and the entire incomparably tall stone wall burst open with a boom sound. It was shaken into pieces by the incomparably violent power. As for the cave that had appeared before, it was nowhere to be seen. It was as if it had never appeared before. Everyone was shocked and used their divine consciousness to search. In fact, each and every one of them unleashed a powerful force that shattered the void and the earth millions of times over. However, they still couldn't find the cave or Murong Yu. If Murong Yu hadn't disappeared before their eyes, they would have thought that they were hallucinating. What do we do? Everyone looked at Zhong Mingji with a worried and shocked expression. Don't panic. Although Junior Brother was taken away, his soul jade slipped and shatter. Therefore, he should be fine for now. Although Zhong Mingji wasn't the strongest, his leadership ability was definitely the best. Therefore, he was the calmest among everyone present. On the other hand, Yin Gaoan, who was the strongest, was brimming with killing intent as guilt flashed across the depths of his eyes. He was able to merge with the heart of ice and snow because of Murong Yu's ability. It was Murong Yu who made him who he was. However, Murong Yu was taken away right in front of him, an expert on the saint rankings. This made him extremely angry and guilty. 13th Junior Brother, you don't have to blame yourself. That person's methods are strange. I'm afraid he's a sovereign. The difference between us and a sovereign is too big. Perhaps This is a great opportunity for junior brother. Zhou Mingji comforted. Eldest senior brother, what should we do? Should we report this to fourth senior brother and master? Wu Xinshui said anxiously, clearly not calm. Let's observe the situation first. If there's still no news of junior brother in a few days, it won't be too late to report this to master. This cave was too strange. Zhou Mingji and the others suspected that it was a sovereign. If it was really a sovereign, then even Yu Yangjia would be helpless. He could only inform the sect master of the Seamless Society. Thus, a group of 16 people set up camp here and began to search the surroundings. However, there was still no trace of Morongyu. At the same time, the news of the Seamless Society destroying the Ice Snow sect had spread throughout the Holy World. For a moment, it shocked the entire Holy Land. All along, the Seamless Society had given people the impression of being mysterious. This was because there were very few Seamless Society disciples, and none of them were flashy people who liked to be in the limelight. Most people even knew that there was a Seamless Society in the 10 Great Holy Lands. However, they did not know who the Seamless Society disciples were. Thus, everyone in the Holy World felt that the Seamless Society was just SOSO. It had the name of a holy land, but it was not a holy land. It could be said that there were not many people in the Holy World who held the Seamless Society in awe. This was because they felt that the Seamless Society was just ordinary. In most people's hearts, the Seamless Society was even inferior to the Heaven-suppressing sect and the Ice Snow sect. It was because of this that the Ice Snow sect wanted to exterminate the Seamless Society, which ultimately led to their own destruction. Because the Seamless Society was low-key and mysterious, the only person that left an impression on everyone was Morongyu. Moreover, Morongyu's cultivation realm was not high. This made the world even more think that the Seamless Society was just SOSO. However, when the news spread that a dozen or so disciples of the Infernal Sect had annihilated 30 to 40,000 peerless experts in one fell swoop, the entire world was stunned. They finally understood that a holy land was a holy land, and peak strength was only peak strength. Even if there were only a dozen or so people in a holy land, no matter how weak a holy land was, it was still not something a peak strength could contend against. A dozen or so people annihilating 30 to 40,000 peerless experts. Almost everyone who knew of this was shocked, especially those peak strength experts. They were so shocked that they could not speak. None of these peak strength experts did not want to become a holy land or pull down the original holy lands like the Seamless Society and replace them. Only now did they realize how shallow, superficial, and overestimating their own capabilities were. If the 10 Seamless Society members were already like this, then how powerful were the holy lands like the true martial Holy Pill sect, which had billions or tens of billions of experts? Not to mention how shocked these forces were and how they restrained their ambitions. Let's just talk about Morongyu. After being wrapped up by the white light, Morongyu's eyes were so dazzled by the white light that he could not open them. At the same time, he felt himself moving. However, after a breath's time, he found his feet on the ground again. At this time, the dazzling white light also disappeared without a trace. Thus, Morongyu was finally able to clearly see where he was. This was a space that was not very big, about a mile in radius. The main hall was completely empty. There was nothing there at all, except for the skeleton at the end of the space. What kind of skeleton was this? The skull was shattered, and the bones in the body were also broken inch by inch. Some bones were even broken, or missing some bones. Obviously, this person must have died because of serious injuries. However, this did not shock Morongyu. With his current strength, he could easily crush a peak ancestral saint's bones with a single slap. It was normal for this skeleton to be injured like this. What surprised Morongyu was that this skeleton was like the skeleton of a mortal after death. There was no luster between the bones, and they were rough and dim. This was clearly the bone of a mortal after death. However, Morongyu became vigilant in his heart. This was the holy world. Where would the bones of a mortal come from? It was obvious that this person had been killed by his enemy. Even the spirituality of his bones had been destroyed. It was precisely because of this that the skeleton looked like a mortal's corpse. Kacha! Kacha! Under Murong Yu's gaze, the skeleton suddenly moved. Then, under Murong Yu's horrified gaze, the skeleton stood up like a human and even slowly walked towards Murong Yu. Murong Yu was shocked and involuntarily took a step back. His eyes were filled with horror. He was not shocked by the skeleton's sudden resurrection. It was not like he had not seen such resurrection before. So how could it scare him? The reason why he was shocked was because the aura of this skeleton was too strong. It was beyond anyone he had seen before. It was at least an existence of the supreme stage. A supreme stage expert. Murong Yu's heart sank. With a thought, he wanted to enter Hichu, Lu Oshu, and escape. But at this moment, the skeleton spoke and made a move. Haha, kid, you want to leave after entering the Sun Monarch's territory? At the same time, the skeleton stretched out its incomplete hand, which only had 3 sections of finger bones left. It slowly reached out to grab Murong Yu. It was extremely slow as a snail. However, Murong Yu's expression changed again and again. An incomparably terrifying force had already imprisoned him. Chapter 16:10. Wait, you're a supreme being? Why are you attacking me, a mere sage king? Although Murong Yu was imprisoned, he still had the ability to speak. Thus, he asked in a cold voice with a hint of doubt. Murong Yu didn't have a good impression of this white skeleton. Even if the other party was a supreme being, if he wanted to kill him, he was his enemy. It would be strange if he had a good impression of him. Thus, Murong Yu's voice didn't have the slightest bit of respect. If it was anyone else, they wouldn't be able to respect someone who wanted to kill them. Supreme being? What's that? The white skeleton stood on the spot. Although there was no flesh and blood, his expression couldn't be seen. But this fellow seemed to be puzzled and deep in thought. However, his words made Murong Yu speechless. Supreme being? What was that? Supreme beings were the strongest existences in the holy world other than the rulers. Which sage with some knowledge didn't know? This skeleton was so powerful, it couldn't be someone who didn't know. Therefore, a thought immediately surfaced in Murong Yu's mind. This guy is definitely acting tough. I remember now. Supreme beings are the so-called super experts in your holy world, right? Ant-like existences. Not to mention trash like supreme beings. I could even kill a realm lord with one breath. After thinking for a while, the white skeleton seemed to have thought of something and said in a disdainful tone. Murong Yu was stunned again. Supreme beings were ant-like existences? Trash? One had to know that there were only 10 supreme beings in the entire holy world. Who dared to say that supreme beings were ants? Of course, it wasn't that there weren't people who dared to say that. That person was the ruler. But was this Sun Monarch a ruler? But what was a realm lord? Murong Yu was stunned. Sometimes he felt that the Sun Monarch was pretending, but sometimes he didn't feel like he was pretending. This fellow's tone was indeed very disdainful, as if he looked down on those supreme beings. Those supreme beings were really trash in his eyes. Your holy world. Suddenly, Murong Yu caught the Sun Monarch's words and became even more puzzled. Murong Yu knew that there were many worlds in the endless primal chaos. This was because he had walked step by step from a mortal world to the saint's world. However, what did your saint's world mean? Could there be other sacred worlds in the endless primal chaos? Or were those worlds not called saints' worlds? Thinking of this, Murong Yu thought of some clues he had obtained in the past. It seemed that the Tao Lord of the Infernal Society and the others were fighting in the outer realm. Combining all these clues together, an unknown door gradually opened in front of Murong Yu. However, although he guessed that there was another world, it was only a guess. Furthermore, he had no idea what exactly was going on. However, he had a feeling that the Sun Monarch wasn't from the holy world. But all of this was just his guess. Thus, he asked, Sun Monarch, are you not from the saint's world? The Sun Monarch laughed and said, Kid, you are quite knowledgeable. You know that I, the Sun Monarch, am not from your trash world. Trash world? Hearing the Sun Monarch's words, Murong couldn't help but feel a little angry. Since our world is trash, why are you still here? Furthermore, you were beaten half to death by others? Don't tell me that you were originally like this. The Sun Monarch was stunned and then became furious. If it wasn't for those bastards who plotted against me, would I have ended up like this? If it wasn't for this world being too trash, I would have recovered my peak strength long ago. If it wasn't for this world being too trash, why would I be trapped here and unable to leave? Murong words seemed to have triggered some bad memories in the Sun Monarch's mind. Thus, this guy started cursing. He didn't have the demeanor of an expert at all. He was just like a scoundrel in the marketplace. However, the Sun Monarch's words told Murong that the Saint's world wasn't the only world in this world. Sun Monarch, other than the Saint's world, how many other worlds are there in the endless primal chaos? And those worlds are of a higher level than the Saint's world? Murong continued to ask. A frog at the bottom of a well. The Sun Monarch calmed down and only said one sentence in disdain. He didn't answer Murong's question. Murong felt depressed. He was indeed a frog at the bottom of a well. However, this was only temporary. After all, he was only a sage ruler now. He didn't even have the qualifications to come into contact with the peak level of the Saint's world, let alone other worlds. However, even so, he was still very shocked. He had a feeling that the sovereigns might not be the strongest existence. Of course, the sovereigns had never been the strongest because there was still the chaos controller above them. However, Murong now felt that there seemed to be a realm between the sovereigns and the chaos controller. However, this was a story for another time. Although Murong was curious, he didn't continue to ask questions. After all, the Sun Monarch wasn't a good person. It was useless to ask. Moreover, even if he knew, it wouldn't be too beneficial to him. The more he knew, the greater the pressure. Although Murong wouldn't bite off more than he could chew. Sun Monarch, what realm were you when you were alive? Were you stronger than the sovereigns? Murong asked, and his expression relaxed. However, secretly, he was thinking of all kinds of ways to escape from this place. However, the Sun Monarch was too strong and directly imprisoned him in this void. Hichu Luoshu couldn't enter, and he couldn't even use the origin energy of the God world to teleport back. Sovereigns. I can kill a large number of them with one breath, the Sun Monarch said disdainfully. At the same time, those hollow eyes looked at Murong, and Murong felt a chill in his heart. This guy was going to attack. As expected, kid, you talk too much nonsense. Even if you know, it won't do you any good. Be obedient and let me eat your flesh. The Sun Monarch smiled maliciously and continued to grab Murong. The Sun Monarch's strength was extremely strong, and it exceeded Murong's imagination. However, his enemy was even stronger and directly destroyed his physical body. Even if he still had a trace of his soul, it could be destroyed at any time. The most terrifying thing was his enemy's methods. Even if countless eras had passed, even if the Sun Monarch was constantly recovering his physical body. However, his bones still gradually lost their luster and strength. As for his physical body, he couldn't recover it at all. After countless eras, he used the power of his soul to build many teleportation circles in the holy world. Countless sages used the teleportation circles themselves or were captured by the Sun Monarch. These people's fates were all the same. They were directly eaten by the Sun Monarch. Yes, directly eaten, just like a ferocious beast eating a human. However, what made the Sun Monarch despair was that even if he continuously ate sages, and even a few supremes at the beginning, he couldn't recover his physical body. He couldn't even slow down the time his bones gradually became ordinary. Otherwise, with the Sun Monarch's strength, his bones would definitely be much stronger than a sovereign's. You want to eat me? Why me? Murong wasn't surprised at all. He had already guessed the Sun Monarch's plan when he saw him. However, what made him curious was that his cultivation level was the weakest among the people in the Infernal Society. Wasn't it said that the higher one's cultivation level, the more nourishing it was for the Sun Monarch? Murong wasn't resentful. He was just curious. Why you? Kid, your physique is very strong. Your physical body is even more attractive to me than the kid with the highest cultivation level. If you eat me, I might be able to recover to my peak. The Sun Monarch laughed loudly. Originally, his target was Gaohan. However, just as he was about to capture Gaohan, he discovered Yu. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to capture Yu. Of course, he was limited by his current strength. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have let Gaohan and the others go. At the beginning, the Sun Monarch was a little disappointed when he saw that Yu was only a sage ruler. However, the more he saw, the more he felt that Yu wasn't simple. Although he didn't know what kind of physique Yu had, he had a feeling that Yu's physical body would give him a surprise. Therefore, he talked so much nonsense to Yu. However, he couldn't wait any longer. He couldn't wait to enjoy Yu's physical body. If he didn't recover soon, the Sun Monarch would be annihilated in this nameless small world. This was something that the Sun Monarch didn't want to face. Moreover, he wanted to take revenge. Therefore, he grabbed Yu and was about to bite Yu. Am I really going to be eaten alive by this disgusting thing? At the thought of being eaten alive, Yu couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart as goosebumps appeared all over his body. That's the only way. A cold light flashed across Yu's eyes. From the beginning, Yu had purposely talked nonsense with the Sun Monarch. On one hand, he was really curious. On the other hand, he wanted to stall for time. During this process, he continued to ponder. Millions of methods flashed through his mind. In the end, he realized that the only thing that worked was a soul attack. His physical body and cultivation were sealed, but Yu's soul wasn't sealed. Maybe the Sun Monarch didn't want to seal Yu's soul. Or maybe he didn't fear Yu's soul attack at all. However, no matter what the situation was, if Yu didn't want to die, he could only use a soul attack. Whether he lived or died depended on this. Spiritual slash. Just as the Sun Monarch was about to bite him, Yu finally made his move. He used the spiritual slash, which was the strongest single target attack he had prepared, to slash at the Sun Monarch's head. It couldn't be helped. Yu hadn't discovered the Sun Monarch's soul at all. After thinking about it, only his head could contain his soul. Chapter 16:11. The Sun Sovereign's body was only made of pale white bones. There was no flesh or blood, and Yu couldn't find his soul either. However, that guy was able to speak directly and not through voice transmission. Also, the Sun Monarch said that he wasn't dead. Therefore, Yu chose to fight the Sun Monarch directly. He wasn't someone who would sit and wait for death. It would be best if he could kill the Sun Monarch. If he couldn't, at least he could escape. Whoosh! Just as Yu used his soul attack, the Sun Monarch's heart trembled. An extremely strong aura of death instantly shrouded his heart, if he still had the heart. Especially Dell's soul, which was attached to the bones, trembled violently from the impact. It was the trembling of death. Kid, you're courting death. The Sun Monarch was the first to react. Yu must have launched his strongest attack against him. The Sun Monarch was extremely confident in his own strength. Therefore, he immediately knew that Yu was using a soul attack. This was because he had sealed Yu's entire body except for his soul. In fact, the Sun Monarch didn't even consider that Yu had 10 soul saints. The Sun Monarch reacted extremely quickly. He exerted strength in his hand and was about to crush Yu. However, Yu's soul attack, which he had been planning for a long time, was faster than him. Just as the Sun Monarch's hand was about to explode with power to crush Yu's soul attack had already slashed the Sun Monarch's soul fiercely. Poof! The sound of a soul shattering could even be heard. Soul fragments kept falling out of the Sun Monarch's skull. At the same time, the Sun Monarch let out an extremely shrill scream. Dang, dang, dang. In an instant, the Sun Monarch retreated due to the intense pain because his soul had been shattered. The hand that was grabbing Yu also loosened. The most frightening thing was that, perhaps due to the attack on his soul, A crack had appeared in the seal, imprisoning Muronyu. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Muronyu rushed into Hichu Luoshu. Then, he was about to teleport away from this damned place. However, just as he was about to teleport away, he glanced at the Sun Monarch. At this moment, the Sun Monarch held his head with both hands and let out miserable shrieks. Furious roars rang out continuously. He didn't even attack Muronyu. Murongyu's heart skipped a beat. With a single thought, the He-Tu and the Luo-Shu transformed into an extremely tiny speck of power. Following the spatial fluctuations caused by the attack, it slowly left the Sun Sovereign. Yes, Muronyu did not leave this damn place. Murongyu's motto in life was that if people didn't offend him, he wouldn't offend them. If people offended him, he would pay them back double. The Sun Sovereign wanted to eat him. This was an irreconcilable feud. How could Muronyu let this guy go? Didn't you want to kill me? Since that's the case, I'll kill you. If the Sun Monarch was extremely powerful, Muronyu would definitely leave this place as soon as he had the chance to escape. However, that unexpected glance made him stay. It seemed like the Sun Monarch was not as powerful as he had imagined. Time accelerated. Muronyu sat down cross-legged and ignited his Chaos Saint Meridian to accelerate time to the limit. The Sun Monarch's seal had not been completely broken. If he wanted to kill the Sun Monarch, Muronyu had to recover to his peak strength. The Sun Monarch seemed to be even more powerful than a ruler. However, it seemed like the sun had set in the west and was at the end of the road. Although the seal was extremely intricate, it was not very powerful. Under Murongyu's charge, it did not take long for him to break through the seal. Of course, this was referring to the time in the Holy World. Under the time acceleration, Muronyu took an entire era to break through the seal. One could only imagine how intricate the Sun Monarch's seal was. Even without powerful strength, Muronyu would not be able to break through it quickly. Muronyu did not know how powerful a ruler was. However, he had a feeling that the Sun Monarch was not bragging. What he said seemed to be true. Otherwise, why would the seal be so powerful even if it did not have much power? Little bastard, if you fall into my hands again, I will definitely eat you alive. When Muronyu looked at the Sun Monarch through the Hichu Luoshu, the Sun Monarch was still roaring furiously. He was gritting his teeth. He was furious and regretful at the same time. He had known that he would eat Muronyu alive when he captured him. However, he had been so smug that he had talked nonsense for so long. In the end, Muronyu had managed to escape. Even the cooked duck had flown away. Moreover, Muronyu's soul attack had almost caused his soul to collapse. He's still not dead. Seeing that the Sun Monarch's aura was weaker than before, but he was still lively, Muronyu could not help but be surprised. His previous attack had clearly shattered the Sun Monarch's soul in his head. Logically speaking, even if the Sun Monarch was not dead, he should have been severely injured. However, in reality, he was not dead. In fact, he was still very lively and energetic. Little bastard, you are actually a soul saint. You actually caught me off guard. Luckily, although my soul is a remnant soul, it is still very strong. However, it has been condensed into all the bones in my body. If you want to destroy my soul, you will have to destroy my entire soul. The Sun Monarch thought that Muronyu had escaped. He was furious, but he felt lucky as he muttered to himself. In the Hichu Luoshu, Muronyu was wondering why this guy was not killed. Just as he was thinking of a way to kill the Sun Monarch, the Sun Monarch had exposed his weakness to Muronyu. He had sent himself to death. Muronyu was overjoyed. However, he could not help but admire the Sun Monarch. Souls usually could only exist in the soul space, but the Sun Monarch had actually condensed his soul into his bones. In this way, if an ignorant soul saint were to attack his soul space, it would be useless. On the other hand, the Sun Monarch seized the opportunity to kill his opponent. After preparing for a while, Muronyu raised his soul power to the peak and attacked again. This time, it was not the Soul Slash. The Soul Slash was only a single target attack. It was impossible to shatter the Sun Monarch's soul in all his bones. This was because Muronyu had used a group attack skill, Soul Storm. The Sun Monarch was cursing when suddenly an even stronger aura of death shrouded his heart. Instantly, the Sun Monarch was shocked. However, his reaction speed was extremely fast. He reacted immediately. His entire body exploded with flames that resembled the sun's fire and covered his entire body. In just an instant, the entire space was covered by the terrifying sun's fire. Sizzling noises could be heard as the void was incinerated by the scorching flames. Boom! Hichu Luoshu was instantly enveloped by the terrifying heat. Immediately, the overflowing damage hit Murongyu, causing his blood to churn and his breathing to become chaotic. What terrifying heat! Murongyu was shocked. He immediately took out all sorts of treasures to protect his body. At the same time, he did not stop attacking. However, although the Grand Sun primordial fire was terrifying, it could not block the soul slash. In other words, it could not block the full power of the attack. This was because a portion of his soul power was still burned. Poof! The Sun Monarch let out a shrill scream again. This time, because it was a large area attack, every bone in his body was taken care of by Murongyu. Therefore, the soul that he had condensed in all his bones was immediately torn apart by Murongyu's violent soul slash. However, because of the Grand Sun primordial fire, it was not completely torn apart. However, Murongyu did not plan to only attack once. Streaks of soul power were continuously released. In less than a breath's time, Murongyu had already used the Soul Storm more than 1,000 times. Whoosh! The Sun Monarch was indeed powerful. He might even be more powerful than a ruler. However, he was already past his prime. He was already in a state of near death. If Murongyu was not a soul sage, it would not be very possible for him to kill him. However, Murongyu is a soul sage. After a round of attacks, the Sun Monarch finally let out a roar of anger. His entire soul had been crushed. When his soul died, the Grand Sun primordial fire that he had released also disappeared into thin air. However, the terrifyingly high temperature was still scorching the void and incinerating it. Even Murongyu was afraid of the terrifying heat. He stayed in Hichu Luoshu for half a month before he dared to come out. That was because even with his current strength, he would not be able to withstand the high temperature from before and would be directly melted away. However, although the Grand Sun primordial fire was terrifying, it could not do anything to Hichu Luoshu. With the help of various treasures, Murongyu had a hard time resisting the Grand Sun Monarch fire in Hichu Luoshu, but in the end, he succeeded. Where did this Sun Monarch come from? Isn't the Grand Sun primordial fire too terrifying? And this is because his power has greatly decreased, and his power is not even a billionth of his peak. Otherwise, I would have been killed by the overflowing damage. Murongyu was shocked. Murongyu was not worried about Hichu Luoshu. No matter how powerful the Grand Sun primordial fire was, it would not be able to cause any damage to Hichu Luoshu. However, due to Murongyu's power, Hichu Luoshu could only absorb a portion of the Grand Sun primordial fire's power. Any power that exceeded its limit would be transferred to Murongyu. Devour the Sun Monarch's soul fragment first. This guy is said to have surpassed a ruler. His soul must contain a terrifying amount of power. Even the remnant soul of the heavenly demoness could raise my cultivation by 2 minor realms. I wonder if the Sun Monarch's remnant soul can help my soul break through again, or maybe break through 2 major realms and reach the 7 stars realm. Chapter 16:12. Was this remnant soul even 1/1000th of the Sun Monarch's peak? When Murongyu was devouring the Sun Monarch's soul, he realized how rare the Sun Monarch's soul was. However, the Sun Monarch was still the Sun Monarch. His soul was too powerful and pure. Even a trace of his soul contained more power than the black-clothed heavenly demoness. The stronger one would be in all aspects. This included the body and soul. For a powerhouse like the Sun Monarch, even if he didn't temper his body and soul, when he was at his peak, even if he stood there and allowed Murongyu to attack him, Murongyu wouldn't be able to kill him. Therefore, when Murong Yu refined the Sun Monarch's soul fragment, Murong Yu's soul, which had just broken through to 5-star second firmament not long ago, broke through again. The Sun Monarch's soul might be very powerful, but this remnant soul was at the end of its road. It didn't affect Murong Yu's devouring speed at all. Therefore, Murong Yu's soul started its terrifying devouring. 5-star third firmament. 5-star fourth firmament. As time passed, Murong Yu's soul continued to improve. At the beginning, he didn't see the Sun Monarch's remnant soul being consumed, but his soul had already broken through 2 to 3 small realms. However, when Murong Yu's soul broke through to the formless 5th firmament, the Sun Monarch's remnant soul was also being consumed at a speed visible to the naked eye. However, the huge power still allowed Murong Yu's soul realm to improve rapidly. When it reached 5-star 9th firmament, Murong Yu's soul realm's improvement speed slowed down. However, the Sun Monarch's remnant soul still had about 2/5 of it. In other words, Murong Yu had only consumed 3/5 of the Sun Monarch's remnant soul when he broke through from 5-star 2nd firmament to 5-star 9th firmament. 2/5 of the original soul's speed. It looks like I can break through to 6-star. Murong Yu thought calmly as he looked at his soul realm and the Sun Monarch's remnant soul slowly improving. However, a 5-star soul could already fight a low-level primal chaos ancestor. On the other hand, wouldn't a soul that had attained 6 stars be able to go head-on against a high-level primal chaos ancestral saint? Even Murong Yu couldn't help but feel excited when he thought about how his strength would soar overnight. However, even though he was excited, he still maintained his calm. If his soul failed to break through due to excitement, then it would be a tragedy. It was unknown how many days had passed. On this day, Murong Yu's soul spirit had already reached the peak of 5 stars. Now, he was only 1 step away from breaking through to 6-star. Murong Yu held his breath with rapt attention. After his body relaxed, he began to break through to the next realm. The realm of one soul was the same as the realm of one's cultivation. One needed to break through to the next realm. He wouldn't be able to break through to the next realm naturally. However, Murong Yu had never given up on cultivating the 9 words mantra, battle skills, and cultivation techniques. As his strength continued to increase, his mastery of the swordsman formula of the sovereign soul had also reached an extremely high level. Just like the chaotic celestial records, Murong Yu had already comprehended it to an extremely high level. Therefore, every time Murong Yu tried to break through to the next realm, it was like a hot knife through butter. Unless he reached the limit of the chaotic celestial records, then Murong Yu's realm would remain stagnant. He could only continue to comprehend the chaotic celestial records until he reached a deeper level. His comprehension of the swordsman formula had already reached an extremely high level. Murong Yu couldn't guarantee that he could break through to 7-star in one go. However, 6-star was still not a problem. The only problem now was whether there would be enough power for Murong Yu to devour in time. However, the remnant soul of the peak Sun Monarch should be enough. As expected, after a few attempts, Murong Yu's soul successfully broke through. From the peak of 5 stars to the level of 6 stars. After breaking through to the next realm, Murong Yu couldn't help but heave a sigh of relief. This was because the remnant soul of the Sun Monarch had been completely devoured the moment he broke through. If he had been slower by just a beat and didn't break through, this breakthrough would have failed. Murong Yu couldn't help but exclaim that he was lucky. However, although his soul had broken through, Murong Yu didn't immediately stop cultivating. After breaking through, he still needed to consolidate his realm. Otherwise, it would be very easy for his realm to drop. After using a few days to consolidate his soul realm, Murong Yu observed his soul. After breaking through, Murong Yu's soul didn't change much from before. His entire soul was still black like endless chaos. However, it was more solid than before. It was almost materialized, almost no different from Murong Yu's original body. Sitting cross-legged on his soul's sea, waves of terrifying soul pressure emanated from his body, suppressing the entire soul space. What a powerful soul pressure! Just this pressure alone, I'm afraid even mid-level chaotic ancestor sages would find it difficult to resist, right? Moronyu chuckled, his eyes gleaming. Soul pressure was the same as one's aura. It was an intangible existence. A chaotic ancestor sage's pressure could kill a peak ancestor sage. These oppressive auras were usually emitted by their powerful strength. Soul pressure was even more terrifying than ordinary pressure, directly suppressing the soul. Once the soul was suppressed, it wouldn't matter how powerful the person was. With the current strength of my soul, a spiritual slash can definitely kill a high-level chaotic ancestor sage. Even if the other party has defense, he won't be able to escape from my annihilation. However, I wonder if I can kill a rank 9 chaotic ancestor sage? Moronyu pondered. Moronyu had encountered high-level chaotic ancestor sages. There were even rank 9 chaotic ancestor sages and sage ranking experts. However, he had never fought with a rank 9 chaotic ancestor sage. He didn't know how powerful a rank 9 chaotic ancestor sage was. However, he was certain that a rank 8 chaotic ancestor sage wouldn't be able to block his attack. In addition to this soul sea with a radius of 500 million miles, who in the entire holy world has a soul sea comparable to mine? Moronyu chuckled, his face filled with satisfaction. Yes, after his soul broke through, his soul sea also broke through and reached a radius of 500 million miles. Such a soul sea might not even be as terrifying as the other soul sages who had reached the level of 9-star. The most terrifying thing was that the soul sea's soul power was full. It could be said that the current soul power could allow Moronyu to unleash the soul storm endlessly without any exhaustion. Moronyu stood up slowly and saw the Sun Monarch's dim bones when he opened his eyes. Thinking about how the Sun Monarch had almost eaten him, Moronyu couldn't help but feel vile. Hence, he threw out a punch. Boom! The Sun Monarch was sent flying. However, what shocked Moronyu was that although he didn't use his full strength, the punch still contained a lot of power. However, the Sun Monarch's bones were unharmed. He's still so powerful even in this state. A trace of surprise flashed across Moronyu's eyes. Plop! At that moment, a small booklet that was shining with golden light fell from the Sun Monarch's body. Sun Sutra. The 4 golden words shone brightly, almost blinding Moronyu's eyes. Could this be the Sun Monarch's cultivation technique? Moronyu's eyes shone brightly. He had already reached out and grabbed the booklet. He had seen the Sun Primordial Fire that the Sun Monarch had unleashed. The Sun Primordial Fire was really powerful. After flipping through it casually, Moronyu realized that it was indeed a cultivation technique. Although it couldn't be compared to the chaotic celestial records, it was more powerful than any cultivation technique that Moronyu had seen before. What Moronyu didn't know was that the Sun Sutra was indeed much more powerful than most cultivation techniques in the Holy World. It wasn't even a cultivation technique from the Holy World. It was the secret technique of the Sun Monarch's faction. The faction that the Sun Monarch belonged to was so powerful that Moronyu couldn't imagine it. The reason why it was the majority was because the chaotic celestial records was one of the strongest and most powerful cultivation techniques in the Holy World. Moreover, no one could guarantee that there weren't any more powerful cultivation techniques in the Holy World. Although the Sun Sutra is powerful, it's useless to me. Moronyu was a little depressed. This was a cultivation technique, not a battle technique. Moronyu was allowed to train in battle techniques. However, he could only cultivate the chaotic celestial records. This was the restriction of the chaotic celestial records. However, even though the main body is unable to cultivate, the clone is able to. Others can too. Moronyu's clone was a golden dragon of the Dragon Clan. It had reached the level of a high-level chaotic ancestor sage when it was alive. Now, After the efforts of Murong Yu's clone, it had recovered to the level of a chaotic ancestor sage. However, in the Holy World, the Golden Dragon's highest achievement was only a high-level chaotic ancestor sage, or it could enter the holy rankings and become an expert on the holy rankings. However, it was impossible for it to become a supreme. However, if it cultivated the Sun Sutra, it wouldn't be a big problem. After putting away the Sun Sutra, Murong Yu searched the area. However, he didn't find anything. There was only the Sun Sutra and the Sun Monarch's bones. I wonder how much power the Sun Monarch's bones contain. Looking at the Sun Monarch's bones, Murong Yu frowned. There was no light, and it looked dim on the surface. However, if that was the case, how could it block Murong Yu's attack without being damaged? After muttering to himself for a moment, Murong Yu subconsciously threw the Sun Sovereign's skeleton into the primal chaos furnace. The next moment, the chaotic furnace trembled slightly and began refining. However, what shocked Murong Yu was that although the Sun Monarch's bones didn't look like much, they weren't refined. There's something strange about it. I wonder how much power it contains. Murong Yu's heart skipped a beat. He immediately sat down again and controlled the chaotic furnace to refine the bones. He didn't believe that he couldn't refine the bones of a Sun Monarch who had died so many years ago. Chapter 16:13. Murong Yu was trying his best to refine the Sun Monarch skeleton. However, the more he refined, the more shocked Murong Yu became. That was because the Sun Monarch skeleton was not damaged at all after several days. One had to know that the Sun Monarch skeleton was probably not even a billionth of its peak power. Even so, Murong Yu could not refine it. Murong Yu estimated that the Sun Monarch skeleton was probably comparable to a juggernaut. Of course, he did not know how strong a juggernaut was. However, he was sure that the Sun Monarch skeleton was definitely comparable to some Supremes. Supremes were similar to Supremes, but if Murong Yu wanted to refine the purple light sky Rota Tower, it would definitely not be so difficult. While he was shocked, Murong Yu was also looking forward to it. He had been stuck at the peak of the Sage Ruler Realm for a long time. Although his soul had broken through repeatedly, and his strength was comparable to a high-level chaotic ancestor sage. However, Murong Yu's enemies were getting stronger and stronger. Now that a powerhouse on the Saint rankings had appeared, it was possible that even a supremacy stage powerhouse would make a move against him. Moreover, there was still a juggernaut above the Supremes. As long as these potential threats were not eliminated, Murong Yu would not be truly safe. In fact, Murong Yu wished that he could break through and become a chaos controller overnight. Only then could he completely control his own fate. The Sun Monarch skeleton was so powerful. Once he refined it, he did not know how much it would increase his cultivation level. However, he would definitely reach the Ancestor Sage realm. The stronger he was, the more benefits he would gain. Therefore, Murong Yu was not discouraged and continued to refine it. Time continued to pass, year after year. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed. On this day, a faint smile appeared on Murong Yu's face. After 100 years of hard work, the Sun Monarch skeleton had finally loosened and started to be refined. Although it was only a trace, as long as there was a start, there was no need to be afraid that he could not refine it later. In the beginning, there was only a small gap. After the smelting process, the power was not too strong. However, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. The power slowly flowed into Murong Yu's body. Murong Yu's cultivation didn't increase in the slightest. This was because this power had been automatically condensed into his body by the chaos furnace. Now, if Murong Yu's physical body didn't break through, his cultivation wouldn't be able to break through. If he wanted to make a breakthrough in his physical body, he would need a massive amount of energy. However, as the refining speed increased and the power increased, Murong Yu's fleshly body also began to slowly but unceasingly improve. In the blink of an eye, another 500 years had passed. In 500 years, about 1/10 of the Sun Monarch had been refined. However, Murong Yu's fleshly body had also reached its peak under the pure and powerful refinement. On this day, a thunderous sound came from Murong Yu's body. At the same time, it was accompanied by an extremely powerful aura. Peerless sacred weapon, fleshly body. Murong Yu suddenly opened his eyes, which were full of joy. After hundreds of years of cultivation, his fleshly body had finally broken through. I should be able to improve my cultivation now, right? Murong Yu thought to himself. The chaos furnace continued to vibrate and didn't stop refining the Sun Monarch skeleton. With the breakthrough in his physical strength, Murong Yu's speed of refining the Sun Monarch skeleton increased significantly. However, what made Murong Yu helpless was that the power of refining the Sun Monarch skeleton still didn't enter his cultivation. It was still injected into his fleshly body. In other words, Murong Yu's fleshly body wasn't strong enough to bear the power of the Ancestor Sage realm. One should know that his fleshly body had already reached the level of a peerless sacred weapon. It seems that I can only break through to the level of an ancestor weapon, Murong Yu thought to himself. He didn't know whether to be happy or depressed. However, the strength of his fleshly body was also very beneficial to Murong Yu's combat strength. Now, he was at least a little stronger than before. With the strength of his fleshly body, he could withstand at least a few times more attacks than before. Peerless sacred weapon corresponds to a sage king. The ancestor sage realm corresponds to an ancestor weapon. Don't let my fleshly body reach the level of a chaos ancestor weapon before I can break through. If that's the case, I don't know when I can break through. Murong Yu thought to himself. He didn't know why, but he had a bad feeling in his heart. However, Murong Yu was relieved that his fleshly body didn't need to reach the level of a chaos ancestor weapon to break through to the next level. After another 100 years, after refining 3/10 of the Sun Monarch skeleton, his fleshly body finally reached the level of an ancestor weapon. Now, there were still 6/10 of the Sun Monarch skeleton that hadn't been refined. However, this 6/10 should be enough for Murong Yu to break through to the Ancestor Sage realm. Murong Yu had been studying the chaotic celestial records, so he didn't have any restrictions for the time being. And the problem of his fleshly body was also solved. Now, as long as he had enough power, Murong Yu could break through to the Ancestor Sage realm from the peak of the Sage King realm. However, this process required a terrifying amount of power. After refining 5/10 of the Sun Monarch skeleton, Murong Yu's cultivation still hadn't broken through. In addition to the 4/10 of the Sun Monarch skeleton that had been used to raise his fleshly body, Murong Yu only had 1/10 of the Sun Monarch skeleton left. Fortunately, Murong Yu also felt that his power had reached its limit. Breakthrough to the next level. Murong Yu's heart was calm and tranquil. He didn't worry about his gains and losses because the Sun Monarch skeleton had decreased. Everything was natural. On this day, when the last bit of the Sun Monarch skeleton was refined, Murong Yu finally welcomed the opportunity to break through. Rumble. It was as if the barrier in front of Murong Yu's cultivation had been shattered in an instant. The realm that had troubled him for a long time finally broke through. The Ancestor Sage realm. First stage, Ancestor Sage. Ha! Feeling his incomparably powerful strength, Murong Yu couldn't help but laugh out loud. Now, just the power of my fleshly body and cultivation, ordinary high-level Chaos Ancestor Sages are definitely no match for me. If combined with my soul attack, no one below the Saint rankings is a match for me. Murong Yu was full of confidence, but he wasn't arrogant enough to say that he was invincible below the Saint rankings. After all, he was strong, but others weren't weak. He was strong, but there might be people with stronger combat power than him. Even if no one had a higher combat power than him, those experienced 9th-stage Chaos Ancestor Sages weren't to be trifled with. After spending a few more months to consolidate his realm, Murong Yu teleported out of the Sun Monarch space. My clone should be here already, right? Murong Yu appeared in a big city called Ningtai City. This was a city he had been to before. This city was also the closest city to the mysterious Frost Secret Realm. Murong Yu wanted to teleport directly to the mysterious Frost Secret Realm or nearby, but there was no teleportation point there. Therefore, Murong-yu couldn't teleport there either. Just after Murong-yu appeared, in a certain inn in Ningtai City, a young man sitting cross-legged on a bed with a faint golden light flashing all over his body suddenly opened his eyes. His original body finally came out. As he spoke, he had already sent out a message. This person was Murong-yu's clone, the golden giant dragon of the True Dragon clan. However, now he had transformed into a human appearance, and there was no trace of resemblance to Murong-yu's appearance. This was Murong-yu's clone, and also his biggest trump card. He wouldn't expose this clone unless he had no other choice. After all, although Murong-yu was strong, Zhao Yun was even stronger. Didn't he still die? Once Murong-yu's original body died, his clone would still exist, and he wouldn't really die. Therefore, this clone couldn't be exposed. After Murong-yu's original body obtained the Sun Sutra, he communicated with his clone and asked him to find a way to come to Ningtai City. Although the Dragon Clan world was relatively closed, after reaching the chaotic ancestor Saint realm, his clone could still find a way to come out. Murong-yu could directly tell the clone the Sun Sutra incantation. However, he found that the Sun Sutra booklet contained some extremely mysterious things. If he directly used this booklet to comprehend it, he could get twice the result with half the effort. Even the Sun Monarch, a big shot, carried it with him all the time. How could it be simple? After Murong-yu's original body appeared, he received a message from his clone. After a little sensing, he knew about his clone. Therefore, he took a step and disappeared. At the same time, in a restaurant in the east of the city, Stella, who happened to pass by, suddenly felt her heart skip a beat. After a little sensing, Stella's face showed a trace of ecstasy. It's the aura of that little bastard Murong-yu. This little bastard is actually in Ningtai City. He's dead. Stella couldn't help but laugh, but his eyes were full of resentment. With a sway of his body, he disappeared from where he stood. Swoosh! When he reappeared, Stella was already in the sky above the inn where Murong-yu's original body and clone were. Stella's face was ferocious. Without saying a word, he raised his strength to the extreme and gathered it on his fist. Then, he aimed at where Murong-yu was and punched down fiercely. At this time, Murong-yu just happened to give the Sun Sutra to his clone. At this time, a dangerous aura instantly shrouded Murong-yu. Someone was sneaking up on him. Murong-yu instantly came to his senses. After exchanging a look with his clone, they were about to leave. At this time, Stella's power that had reached rank 9 chaotic ancestor Saint realm came crashing down. This guy had broken through again during this time and had reached rank 9 chaotic ancestor Saint. Boom! The entire inn was directly blasted to smithereens. Countless saints didn't even have time to react before they were smashed to smithereens by Stella's punch. After all, the power of a rank 9 chaotic ancestor saint was too terrifying. Chapter 16:14. Whoosh! Whoosh! The rank 9 chaotic ancestor saint's full force attack shattered the entire inn and even the surrounding area. Seeing her attack, a satisfied smile appeared on Stella's face. Murong-yu's soul attack was powerful, but his cultivation was not. How could he not die? Stella was fully convinced that Murong-yu had already been killed by his fist. Hence, he did not continue attacking. However, just when he thought that Murong-yu was dead, 2 black figures suddenly soared into the sky from the ruins of the inn and shot off in opposite directions. Stella was stunned, and his face was filled with disbelief. Although Ningtai City was considered a big city, there was definitely no rank 9 chaotic ancestor saint in the inn. Given his strength, none of the level 9 primal chaos ancestral saints could withstand his attacks. However, there were 2 people who had escaped his attack. This made him very displeased. Just as he was about to make a second move to kill these 2 people, his eyes suddenly shot out 2 terrifying beams of light. This was because he sensed Murong-yu's aura. Murong-yu was not killed. Stella was enraged when he realized this. In the blink of an eye, he raised his strength to the limit and ruthlessly threw a punch at Murong-yu. As for Murong-yu's clone, he did not care. As for Murong-Yu's clone, it didn't linger either. Instead, it quickly disappeared into the distant horizon. Murong-Yu's original body could handle this. It was at this moment that Murong-Yu finally discovered who had done it. He looked at Stella coldly and said in a chilling voice, "Stella, you're courting death." As for Stella's attack, Murong-Yu ignored it. Although Stella had broken through to rank 9 Chaotic Ancestor Saint, he had just broken through. His strength was too weak compared to those experienced rank 9 Chaotic Ancestor Saints. With Murong-Yu's current strength, he was not afraid at all. Murong-Yu was confident that he could fight anyone below the Saint ranking. Little bastard, die. Infuriated, Stella's fist smashed through space and time as it smashed towards Murong-Yu at lightning speed. Countless buildings nearby, and even the saints who could not dodge in time, were killed by the aftershock of Stella's power. Murong-Yu furrowed his brows. Although he wasn't the one who killed those people, he was still the one who killed them. Although he did not kill them, they died because of him. He was not a person who would kill the innocent. Therefore, with a thought, he took a step forward and disappeared on the spot in a flash. He turned into a stream of light and rushed out of Ningtai City. Little bastard, you can't escape today. Stella was furious and charged at Murong-Yu with his fastest speed. After leaving Ningtai City, Murong-Yu's face. He turned to face Stella with an indifferent smile. Murong-Yu was not afraid of Stella at all. Moreover, Stella had broken through to the rank 9 Chaotic Ancestor Saint realm. It was a good opportunity for him to practice. Elephant Drawing Fist. Although the Dragon Elephant Prajna technique was a cultivation technique cultivated in the secular world, it was an extremely powerful combat technique. Even with Murong-Yu's high cultivation level, he was surprised every time he used this combat technique. The stronger one was, the more terrifying the power of this combat technique would be. Therefore, Murong-Yu did not cultivate any other combat techniques all these years. Instead of cultivating countless combat techniques, it was better to specialize in a few sets of powerful combat techniques. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the fists of the two had already collided in the void. At the moment of collision, Stella's face revealed a ferocious expression. Murong-Yu is only a rank 1 Ancestor Saint. How could he compare to a rank 9 Chaotic Ancestor Saint? However, because Murong-Yu was a soul saint, Stella still retained a portion of his power in the soul space to protect his soul. However, very soon, the ferocious expression on Stella's face disappeared and was replaced by a look of horror. Because in the next moment after the collision, his power was destroyed. On the other hand, Murong-Yu's attack didn't stop at all. It tore through space and time as it headed straight for Stella. Murderous intent filled the air. Stella was shocked, but he didn't panic. He growled. He roared and struck out with his palm again, trying to break Murong-Yu's attack. However, Murong-Yu's attack was too powerful. Before Stella's attack could even get close to Murong-Yu's fist, it had already collapsed. Purple lightning sword, slash. Stella was shocked. He did not know how Murong-Yu had become so powerful in just a few hundred years. 18 black wings flapped wildly and covered the sky. Terrifying rays of light exploded from Stella's body, causing the surrounding void to shatter. As Stella retreated rapidly, he took out the top-grade Chaotic Ancestor weapon that he was proud of. The Purple Lightning Sword was one of the 10 great sacred weapons of the Stella Demon Clan. Although it was not as powerful as a supreme weapon, it was still a top-grade sacred weapon. It was an existence comparable to a supreme weapon. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a half-step supreme weapon. Whoosh! A purple bolt of lightning flashed in the void. At the same time, all the hair on Murong-Yu's body stood on end. His heart was shrouded by an intense aura of death. The Purple Lightning Sword's power was comparable to a supreme weapon, and it was not the most powerful one. The most powerful thing about the Purple Lightning Sword was its speed. Even an average supreme weapon was not as fast as it. Therefore, when Stella took out the Purple Lightning Sword, this terrifying sacred weapon was already in front of Murong-Yu. Murong-Yu was overwhelmed with shock. With a single thought, he had already retreated. However, The speed of the purple lightning saber was still too fast. Just as his figure swayed, it had already slashed towards him. Hichu Luoshu! Murongyu roared in his heart. Hichu Luoshu appeared and blocked the purple lightning sword's attack. Murongyu did not dare to use his body to block it. His body was only at the level of an ancestral weapon. If he blocked the purple lightning sword, he would be cut in half. Bang! Although Hichu Luoshu blocked the purple lightning sword, the terrifying power still sent Murongyu flying. If not for the fact that Murongyu was no longer the same person he was in the past, he would still have been shaken to the point that his chi and blood became restless. So powerful. Stella was shocked again. His eyes almost fell out of their sockets. He knew how terrifying the purple lightning sword was. In addition to being powerful and fast, the purple lightning sword also had a hidden attribute. It could ignore defense. Not long ago, he had used the purple lightning sword to kill an experienced level 9 Chaos Ancestor Saint. But now, he could not kill Murongyu, a level 1 Ancestor Saint. Slash! Slash! Although Stella was shocked, he did not stop attacking. Bolts of purple lightning appeared out of nowhere. They turned into billions of bolts of purple lightning that cut through the void and slashed toward Murongyu. Murongyu did not dare to be careless. Hichu Luoshu transformed into a suit of armor and put it on. Bang! Murongyu punched out and hit the purple lightning sword. A powerful force erupted, and it actually blasted the purple lightning saber away. As for Murongyu, he was sent flying like a broken ragdoll. Because of Hichu Luoshu, Murongyu was not injured, but it was necessary for his chi and blood to be in turmoil. However, even though the purple lightning blade was sent flying, it quickly slashed over again. This made Murongyu depressed. Stella had already retreated far away and was only controlling the purple lightning sword to slash at Murongyu. A level 9 Chaos Ancestor Saint dared not fight a level 1 Ancestor Saint in close combat. This made Stella feel embarrassed. But Murongyu was not an ordinary Ancestor Saint. Moreover, as long as he could kill Murongyu, he did not care what method he used. Bang! 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 Murongyu was like a sandbag being slashed by the purple lightning sword. He could not get close to Stella at all. This made him speechless. Apart from the Hichu Luoshu and purple heavenly rosette pagoda, Murongyu's other treasures could not compare to the purple lightning sword. Do I have to use my supreme weapon? Murongyu's heart skipped a beat. If he used his supreme weapon, the purple lightning sword would be shattered in an instant. However, the purple heavenly rosette pagoda needed too much power. Murongyu was not sure if he would be sucked dry. All right, isn't there still the celestial trapping sword? Murongyu's heart skipped a beat, and he laughed. The celestial trapping sword was kept in the Hichu Luoshu in the mysterious Frost Secret Realm. After hundreds of years, it was finally subdued by Murongyu. The celestial trapping sword was much stronger than the celestial exterminating sword and the immortal slaughtering sword. It was also in existence comparable to a supreme weapon. I wonder which is stronger, the celestial trapping sword or the purple lightning sword. Murongyu's heart skipped a beat. The celestial trapping sword had already turned into a stream of light and shot out from the Hichu Luoshu. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the two weapons, which were comparable to supreme weapons, collided with each other. A terrifying force erupted, and a large part of the surrounding void was instantly annihilated. Crack! A cracking sound could be heard. Murongyu and Stella's hearts skipped a beat. However, Murongyu's face soon revealed a dangerous look. The celestial trapping sword was fine. Since the celestial trapping sword was fine, then the purple lightning sword was in trouble. Stella's expression changed, and she was about to withdraw the purple lightning sword. But at this moment, Kacha sounds kept echoing. From afar, one could see that the purple lightning blade, which was originally wreaking havoc and suppressing Murongyu to the point where he couldn't even retaliate, was now breaking apart into countless fragments in the air. The purple lightning sword, one of the 10 great divine weapons of the Fiend clan, was broken just like that. Whoosh! Ignoring the shock in her heart, Stella frantically flapped her 18 black wings and turned into a stream of light, flying toward the distant horizon. Now that she had lost her only advantage, she was no longer a match for Muronyu. If she did not flee now, when would she? Chapter 16:15. There was no doubt that Stella was powerful. However, without the purple lightning blade, he wouldn't be Murongyu's match. Moreover, after the immortal trapping sword was summoned, his purple lightning blade was also shattered. And this was because Murongyu didn't use a soul attack. Otherwise, Stella would have been killed. According to Murongyu's estimations, Murongyu's current overall strength was enough to dominate anyone below the saint rankings. Stella, you're leaving just like that? Murongyu sneered. The immortal trapping sword had already pierced through the void and turned into a sword radiance that slashed at Stella. Stella's hair stood on end. His heart was also enveloped by an intense aura of death. His face was filled with shock as his speed skyrocketed again. He broke through the endless space and quickly escaped. Even the purple lightning blade, one of the demon clan's 10 great saint weapons, couldn't withstand a single blow. If he was hit by the immortal trapping sword, he would definitely die. Moreover, Murongyu didn't use a soul attack. However, although Stella was fast, the immortal trapping sword was even faster. After a chi sound, the immortal trapping sword appeared behind Stella and slashed down at lightning speed. Stella was inexplicably shocked as an intense aura of death enveloped him. At this moment, he knew that he was definitely going to die. There was nowhere to run. However, he didn't want to die. Therefore, he roared and gathered all his strength on his right fist. He then punched at the immortal trapping sword in an attempt to stop it. However, Stella didn't have any hope, because the immortal trapping sword was simply too powerful. Ding! Just as Stella was about to be killed. However, at this moment, a bright light tore through the sky from afar. It hit the immortal trapping sword in a flash. After a crisp sound, the boundless power of the immortal trapping sword dissipated in an instant. The immortal trapping sword paused for a moment before it was sent flying. Boom! Just as the immortal trapping sword was attacked, Murongyu, who was not far behind, trembled. An incomparably powerful force blasted Murongyu's body through the air. At this moment, Murongyu's physical body seemed to be crushed by an ancient sacred mountain. The frightening power erupted, causing the blood and chi in Murongyu's body to churn like a raging sea. Even Murongyu's mind was shaken to the point of trembling violently. Only his soul was still sitting cross-legged in his soul sea. Dang, dang, dang. Murongyu retreated a few steps in the air, shattering the space behind him. Waves of power surged out of his feet, shattering the boundless space. The energy that surged out was the energy that had entered Murongyu's body and was forced out by him. Murongyu only managed to stabilize himself after retreating 7 to 8 steps. He looked into the distance. At the same time, he grabbed the immortal trapping sword and the sword in the air was caught. Whoosh! A big foot stepped out of the boundless space. The surrounding space was shattered by the force of the big foot. Stella, who was near the big foot, was shaken to the point that his blood was churning. He retreated. After a long distance, he finally stopped and looked at the big foot with a horrified expression. After the big foot came out, an illusory figure appeared in front of Murongyu and the others. As the illusory figure continued to solidify, a black-clothed youth with a saber on his back and an indifferent expression entered Murongyu's line of sight. Chi chi chi. The black-clothed young man just stood there, but he was like an unparalleled saber. Streaks of incomparably sharp, invisible saber chi constantly erupted from his body, shattering the surrounding void and slashing in all directions. Sharp, domineering, full of murderous intent. This was the feeling that the black-clothed young man gave Murongyu. After standing still, the black-clothed young man glanced at Murongyu. Boom! The moment the black-clothed young man's gaze landed on Murongyu, Murongyu felt as if he was being crushed by an ancient sacred mountain. His skin hurt as if it was being burned by the most terrifying flame in the world. Even his body, which had reached the level of an ancestral artifact, had started to crack. Just a glance? Just a glance had such terrifying power. Muronyu retreated a few more steps and blocked the black-clothed young man's attack. He looked at the black-clothed young man with a cold expression. This person was definitely an expert on the saint rankings. From afar, the black-clothed young man's power was much weaker than Ingao's. However, he was many times stronger than those experienced rank 9 chaotic ancestor sages. However, what puzzled Muronyu was that Ingaon should be stronger than this young man. However, the feeling that the two gave Muronyu was like heaven and earth. Perhaps it was because of the black-clothed young man's murderous intent. Why are you, an expert on the saint rankings, attacking me? Muronyu looked at the other party indifferently and asked in a deep voice. At the same time, he had secretly communicated with many treasures. As long as something went wrong, he would immediately rush into the Hichu Luo Shu and teleport away. The difference in strength between the two sides was too great. If he chose to fight head-on instead of escaping, he would definitely be out of his mind. I heard that you destroyed the Ice Snow sect. The black-clothed young man looked at Muronyu and said indifferently. His voice was as sharp as a blade. Muronyu frowned slightly. Was this young man related to the Ice Snow sect? Although the Ice Snow sect was powerful, they definitely didn't have an expert on the saint rankings. Moreover, there weren't many rank 9 chaotic ancestor sages. However, even if the other party was an expert on the saint rankings, Muronyu wouldn't be afraid to answer, let alone an expert on the saint rankings. What's done is done. What's there to be afraid of? It's me. You want revenge? Muronyu sneered and was ready to enter the Hichu Luo Shu. Boom! Hearing Muronyu's affirmative answer, the black-clothed young man's murderous intent erupted like a torrent. With the black-clothed young man as the center, the terrifying murderous intent spread in all directions. However, most of the murderous intent was aimed at Muronyu. At the same time, the black-clothed young man took a step forward and looked coldly at Muronyu. He said expressionlessly, "In that case, go to hell." As he spoke, the black-clothed young man threw a punch at Muronyu. In the distance, Stella watched all this with his mouth agape. He originally thought that he was going to be killed by Muronyu, but such an expert suddenly appeared out of nowhere, and it seemed that this expert was much stronger than Muronyu. Muronyu was definitely going to die. Stella sneered and took a step back. However, he did not leave the place. He wanted to see Muronyu being killed with his own eyes. Muronyu's face changed drastically. He was extremely angry. The black-clothed young man had attacked him without saying a word, which had infuriated him. Muronyu originally wanted to enter the Hichu Luo Shu. However, he suddenly changed his mind. He was unwilling to escape just like that. Moreover, with his foundation, although the black-clothed young man was powerful, he might not be able to kill him. Soul Slash. Muronyu's guts rose as he directly launched his most powerful single-target soul attack. At the same time, Muronyu took out the Yin-Yang Cauldron and attacked his opponent. "You're overestimating yourself." The black-clothed young man sneered. His fist shook violently and violently hit the Yin-Yang Cauldron. After an earth-shattering explosion, the Yin-Yang Cauldron was sent flying by the young man's punch. Muronyu's mind had also received a heavy blow, causing him to suffer some minor injuries. Soul attack. This is interesting. However, it's still too weak. It can't even withstand a single blow. The black-clothed young man sneered, his face full of disdain. At the same time, his other hand suddenly reached out and grabbed the air. Bang! Muronyu's soul attack was destroyed by his grab. Muronyu was instantly shocked. This was the first time someone had destroyed his soul attack. Previously, even if his soul attack did not work, no one was able to destroy his soul attack. This black-clothed young man was very powerful. Although he was not as strong as Yin Gaohan, he was close. Experts on the saint rankings were indeed terrifying. The difference in cultivation level was too great, and his soul attack could not do anything to the other party. Basically, it was impossible to do anything to this person. Is this all the chaotic celestial body can do? The black-clothed young man sneered. The large hand that had destroyed Murong Yu's soul attack once again reached out and grabbed at Murong Yu. An inexplicable force emanated from the black-clothed young man's palm and quickly dissipated in all directions like ripples in water. Murong Yu's expression changed slightly because he had just discovered that the surrounding void seemed to have solidified. Chaotic celestial body, Hichu Luo Shu. You can't enter Hichu Luo Shu. Let's see how you're going to die. The black-clothed young man sneered. His large hand had already penetrated billions of space-time and ruthlessly smashed at Murong Yu's head. An intense aura of death instantly shrouded Murong Yu's mind. Murong Yu's face was gloomy, and his eyes flashed with a cold, killing intent. If the black-clothed young man thought that this was all Murong Yu was capable of, then he was gravely mistaken. Murong Yu still had a few sovereign artifacts. There was no way he could use Nuwa's sacred temple, and the scripture of mountains and seas wasn't very powerful. The most powerful aspect of the scripture of mountains and seas was the vicious beasts within. However, he hadn't subdued many vicious beasts yet. The dozens of vicious beasts he had were not enough to withstand a single slap from the black-clothed young man. Thus, the only weapon Murong Yu could use right now was the heavenly purple rosette tower. With but a thought, the heavenly purple rosette tower transformed into a streak of purple light and shot out from within Murong Yu's body. It expanded with the wind, and in the blink of an eye, the heavenly purple rosette tower grew to the size of a small mountain and erupted with an incomparably terrifying aura. Five-colored sacred light soared into the sky, and the heavenly purple rosette tower carried with it a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth as it smashed towards the black-clothed young man. A sovereign artifact. A cold light flashed through the black-clothed young man's eyes. His large hand moved horizontally, and he actually grabbed at the heavenly purple rosette tower. Chapter 16:16. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the young man's hand had already grabbed the purple radiance heavenly rota tower. After an earth-shattering explosion, the purple radiance heavenly rota tower was sent flying. However, the young man in black did not have it easy either. His body, which was originally standing in the air like an ancient sacred mountain, was also sent flying by the power of the purple radiance heavenly rota tower. Bang! 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 The young man in black smashed through the endless void. In an instant, the young man was sent flying hundreds of millions of miles away. From afar, the young man's face was ashen, and his eyes were spitting fire as he glared at Murong Yu from afar. It seemed that the young man in black was very angry. After all, he was an expert on the Saint leaderboard. Although his ranking was not as high as Murong Yu's, as an expert on the Saint leaderboard, he was actually sent flying by Murong Yu. Moreover, his chi and blood were surging like a raging sea from the impact. How could he not be furious? It was a disgrace. In the distance, Murong Yu's face was gloomy, although it seemed that he had the upper hand in this exchange of blows. In reality, Murong Yu was the one who was at a disadvantage. Although the young man in black was sent flying, the purple radiance heavenly rota tower was also sent flying. Moreover, the overflowing damage almost shattered Murong Yu's mind. Most importantly, the purple radiance heavenly rota tower was his most powerful attack at the moment. If it could not hurt the young man in black, what else could Murong Yu do to fight with the young man in black? At the same time, he deeply felt the terror of an expert on the Saint leaderboard. "Ha! Murong Yu, you little bastard, weren't you very arrogant? Now, let's see how you're going to die." Previously, Stella had been tortured by Murong Yu. Now that he saw Murong Yu being tortured by the young man in black, he could not help but laugh out loud. Murong Yu glanced at Stella indifferently, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. At the same time, he slashed out a soul attack. Soul Slash. An extremely strong aura of death suddenly enveloped Stella's heart. Stella's laughter stopped abruptly. His expression changed drastically as he knew that Murong Yu had attacked him. Without any hesitation, He unleashed his fastest speed and charged towards the black-clothed young man. He knew that he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand Murong Yu's soul attack. Moreover, he could not escape from Murong Yu's attack. Now, only the black-clothed young man could save him. Therefore, he dashed toward the black-clothed young man. In the distance, the black-clothed youth naturally knew what Stella was thinking. However, he couldn't let Murong Yu kill Stella in front of him. It would be even more humiliating if Murong Yu killed the person he was protecting right in front of him. So he stretched out his big hand and grabbed at Stella in the air. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light. He sneered and increased his soul attack to the limit. With a swoosh, Murong Yu's soul struck Stella's soul fiercely. In just an instant, Stella's soul was destroyed. Stella was dead. However, even though Stella was killed, his physical body wasn't injured at all. Moreover, due to inertia, he continued to fly forward rapidly. Swoosh! The black-clothed youth finally stretched out his hand and grabbed Stella's body. Just as the black-clothed youth thought that Stella had been saved, his expression suddenly changed. This was because he realized that Stella had lost all signs of life. When his divine thought rushed into Stella's soul space, he realized that Stella's soul had been shattered. Yet, Murong Yu had managed to kill Stella while he was taking action. At this moment, the black-clothed youth was even more furious than before. Humiliation, humiliation. This was the greatest humiliation. Murong Yu, I'm going to kill you. The black-clothed youth roared angrily. He took a step forward and threw a punch at Murong Yu across space. However, just as he made his move, Murong Yu had already turned into a streak of light, streaked across the sky, and quickly fled into the distance. Murong Yu had fled without a fight. Originally, Murong Yu thought that he could use the purple light heavenly roar tower to fight against the black-clothed youth, who was an expert on the saint ranking. However, he realized that he couldn't, so he fled. He would be an idiot if he didn't flee. If the surrounding space hadn't been sealed, Murong Yu would have entered Hichu Luoshu long ago. Boom! Murong Yu had increased his speed to the maximum. In the blink of an eye, he had traversed billions of space-time. However, no matter how fast he was only as fast as a rank 9 chaotic ancestor saint. He was far inferior to the black-clothed youth, who was an expert on the saint ranking. A terrifying power tore through space and came at him. Before he even got close to Murong Yu could already feel the terrifying aura. The terrifying aura was so strong that Murong Yu's body, which had reached the level of an ancestral artifact, was almost crushed. It was just the aura. If he was hit by the punch, Murong Yu's body would definitely explode. Damn it! Murong Yu was extremely frustrated. Until now, he still didn't know who the black-clothed youth was and why he wanted to kill him. What Murong Yu didn't know was that in the entire Saint's world, apart from his family and friends, who didn't want to kill him. However, even though Murong Yu was frustrated, he wasn't someone who would sit around and wait for death. Hichu Luoshu had already transformed into a suit of armor. The purple light heavenly roar tower floated above his head and shone down rays of light, enveloping him firmly. However, this wasn't enough. Murong Yu also took out the mountain and sea scripture and the yin-yang cauldron, two supreme artifacts. Two treasures that surpassed the supreme artifacts. However, even so, Murong Yu still felt unsafe. This was because he couldn't activate the full power of these treasures at his current level. If he could kill the black-clothed youth with any one of them. After doing all this, Murong Yu reached into the Hichu Luoshu and took out a bunch of communication jade slips. Then he crushed them all. These were the communication jade slips of the Seamless Society. Murong Yu was helpless. Originally, he didn't want to ask for help. However, he had no choice now. In fact, he only wanted Yu Yangjia and Yin Gaoan to rush over in time. With their strength, dealing with the black-clothed youth was definitely not a problem. Although Lu Xiankai and the rest were powerful, they weren't experts on the holy rankings. After Murong Yu crushed the transmission jade slips to call for help, he made several grasping motions in the air. In the next moment, The Chinquin bow and the heaven-shaking arrow appeared in his hands. Whether or not I'll be able to keep my life depends on you, Murong thought to himself as he fiercely shot out the 3 heaven-shaking arrows. Although Murong had asked for help, he wasn't someone who relied on others. He was the most reliable person in everything. The 3 heaven-shaking arrows turned into 3 rays of golden light that broke through the void and appeared directly in front of the black-clothed youth's attack. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, the first sky-shaking arrow was bounced off. Although the black-clothed youth's attack wasn't destroyed, it was stopped for a moment. At this moment, the second arrow was shot. Another earth-shattering sound rang out. Several cracks had appeared on the black-robed youth's attack, and his speed had slowed down once again. But when the third attack came, this incomparably condensed power was shattered with a bang. The power of 3 arrows. Seeing this, Murong was delighted. He felt that the power of the heaven-shaking arrow seemed to be more powerful than the attack of the heavenly purple light rhoda. Moreover, the power used to shoot the arrows was less than 1% of the power of the heavenly purple light rhoda. Moreover, the most important thing was the uniqueness of the heaven-shaking arrow. It wouldn't turn back until it killed the enemy. Therefore, although the 3 heaven-shaking arrows were sent flying in the end, very quickly, they broke through the void again and shot towards the black-clothed youth's attack. In a flash, the black-clothed youth's attack was destroyed by the 3 heaven-shaking arrows. Then, the 3 heaven-shaking arrows broke through the void and turned into 3 rays of golden light that entered Murong's body. The black-clothed youth who was chasing behind was stunned. He didn't expect Murong to have such a skill. However, he quickly turned to look at Murong with a greedy expression. If he could kill Murong, not only could he get Murong's chaotic celestial body, but he could also get his various treasures. Murong's treasures were not ordinary. If he got his hands on them, his strength would definitely skyrocket. It wouldn't be a problem for him to rush to the top of the holy rankings. With greed in his heart, the youth attacked even more fiercely. In less than a breath's time, he closed the distance between him and Murong again. The advantage that he had gained with the help of the heaven-shaking arrows was instantly gone. Boom! A shockwave of energy ruthlessly bombarded Murong's body. Murong immediately activated the heavenly purple light rhoda, the Yin-Yang cauldron, and the Hichu Luo Shu to form a defense and dissipate most of the attack. However, they couldn't block all of the attack. Boom! Crack! Murong's body, which had reached the level of an ancestral artifact, was like porcelain. Cracks began to appear on his body and spread out in all directions. Fresh blood gushed out like a fountain. It was an extremely terrifying sight. Hichu, can you enter the Hichu Luo Shu now? Murong roared in his mind. There's a 50% chance that you'll charge into the chaotic turbulence. Your body can already withstand the chaotic turbulence. However, there's a chance that you'll be exiled forever, Hichu said in a low voice. In the beginning, the void had been sealed. Murong couldn't enter the Hichu Luo Shu. Now he could enter. However, the black-clothed youth's continuous attacks made the space around Murong unstable. Therefore, he couldn't enter the Hichu Luo Shu safely. Murong hesitated for a moment. Infinite exile. Just as Murong was hesitating, there was a sudden roar in front of him. Then, Murong was horrified to discover that a terrifying and indescribable power had enveloped his body. He couldn't break free from it. Before he could react, there was a swoosh, and his body disappeared on the spot. Chapter 16-17. Rumble. The instant Murong disappeared, the black-clothed youth's huge fist came crashing over, shattering the void within a radius of 100 million miles and annihilating it. However, Murong had already disappeared. Who is it? Who is it that ruined my plan? The black-robed young man roared. He traversed hundreds of millions of space-time and appeared at the place where Murong had disappeared. At the same time, he threw out another punch with his invincible divine fist. However, this time, it was not Morongyu who was killed. Instead, it was the person who had exiled Morongyu. However, what made the black-robed young man even more furious was that the person who had secretly attacked Morongyu did not seem to exist at all. No matter how he attacked, he could not force that person out of the void. It was as if that person had never existed. However, if it was not for that person, why would Morongyu be exiled? Perhaps that person left after exiling Morongyu? The black-robed young man was extremely furious. A terrifying aura burst out from his body, shattering the void around him. However, it was all in vain. Then, where was Morongyu exiled to? Morongyu felt his vision turn black. A huge force was exerted on his body, making him unable to move. Everything before him was pitch black. Although he couldn't see anything, Morongyu knew that he was rapidly moving forward. Morongyu took out all his treasures and surrounded them. He did not make any unnecessary movements. It was very dangerous for something to happen during such a teleportation. It was better to wait quietly until he was about to be exiled to somewhere. After what seemed like an instant or hundreds of millions of years, Morongyu's eyes finally lit up. Then, he was ejected from the void passage. Crack! As soon as Morongyu landed, the things under his feet were crushed. His entire body suddenly sank down until it was below his kneecap. At the same time, a desolate, murderous, and ancient aura assaulted his face. Morongyu could even smell the strong scent of blood in the air. When he looked down, he saw that there were countless skeletons beneath his feet. The sound just now was because Morongyu had crushed a lot of bones. Looking into the distance from his feet, all he could see was a field of white bones. There were all kinds of broken limbs. There was no flesh, only severely damaged bones and rusty weapons. What is this place? Morongyu was surprised. With a thought, he soared into the air. However, he soon found it difficult to ascend. In reality, the pressure in this place was extremely great. The higher the altitude, the greater the pressure. There seemed to be a restriction that prohibited flying here. However, perhaps because it was too long ago, people like Morongyu could still withstand the pressure and fly. It was just that it wasn't too high. Withstanding the tremendous pressure, Morongyu flew into the void. Looking into the distance, all he could see was a scene of devastation, endless bones, and various rusty weapons. This was a battlefield. Moreover, this battlefield had been around for a long time. It should be an ancient battlefield. Morongyu thought to himself as he moved forward quickly. Soon, he realized that this ancient battlefield was huge and there were countless bones. Could this be the ancient battlefield? After observing, Morongyu realized that other than the bones of the human race, there were all kinds of bones in this battlefield. The demon race, dragon race, phoenix race, demon race, angel race, and so on. Therefore, Morongyu guessed that this was the place where the various races fought in the ancient times. However, Morongyu had never heard of this ancient battlefield. Moreover, what depressed him the most was that the space of this ancient battlefield was extremely solid. He couldn't break this space with a single punch. This space seemed to be independent. Morongyu couldn't sense the teleportation points in the Holy World, God World, and other worlds. In other words, Morongyu couldn't teleport out at all. He couldn't use the origin of the God World to teleport out. However, what comforted Morongyu was that he could still enter the Hichu Luo Shu. However, if he wanted to leave, he could only find the exit. Otherwise, he could only spend the rest of his life in this ancient battlefield. Roar! Morongyu was moving forward alone. All of a sudden, a roar that shook the heavens and earth was heard. At the same time, an extremely strong and dangerous aura rose from the bottom of Morongyu's heart. At this moment, Morongyu had goosebumps all over his body. Without the slightest hesitation, Morongyu threw a punch behind him. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, Morongyu's fist seemed to have hit a ferocious beast. However, in reality, there was nothing near him. However, Morongyu was certain that he'd killed something with his attack. This was because at the same time of the collision, the violent power had sent him flying. It was at least a rank, 9. Chaotic Ancestor Saint. Moreover, it was formless and intangible. Murong Yu's eyes flickered as he looked at his surroundings. He wanted to see the energy radiance and the aura that the other party left in the void. However, what made him feel strange was that he didn't see any energy radiance or aura other than his own. However, he saw the fluctuation in the space that he attacked. Swoosh! A dangerous aura appeared in Murong Yu's heart again. Murong Yu's face turned gloomy. With a thought, he quickly retreated. However, the dangerous aura was like a shadow attached to him. Not only did it not weaken, but became stronger instead. What is it? Come out. Murong Yu saw an extremely hidden ripple in the void in front of him. If he didn't control the rules of space, he wouldn't have noticed it. At the same time, Murong Yu stretched out his hand and slammed it into the air. Rumble, large patches of the void were shattered. However, nothing could be seen at all. Bang! At this moment, Murong Yu felt a sharp pain in his body. Then a huge force slammed into his body and sent him flying. If it weren't for the fact that Murong Yu had already taken out the He-Tu, Luo's shoe, and other treasures, his body would have exploded from this attack. After sending Murong Yu flying, the unknown existence suddenly disappeared. No matter how Murong Yu observed and searched, he couldn't find the other party. He didn't know if the existence was invisible or it was very good at hiding. Murong Yu's divine thought had covered the void in a radius of hundreds of millions of miles, but he still didn't find anything. However, the dangerous aura in his heart didn't stop. This was because the unknown existence was still spying on him in the dark. Murong Yu searched through his memories, but couldn't find anything related to powerful, vicious beasts that could conceal themselves. Even He-Tu didn't know. Since you don't want to come out, I'll force you out. Murong Yu's eyes flashed with a cold light. At the same time, the soul power in his spiritual space started a riot. Soul Storm. Following Murong Yu's roar, an incomparably berserk soul force spread out in all directions with Murong Yu's body as the center. It was an indiscriminate attack. As long as it was within the attack range of the Soul Storm, everything could be attacked. Perhaps sensing danger, the unknown existence quickly retreated from the void. However, although it was fast, Murong Yu's Soul Storm wasn't slow either, and it was a sudden attack. Boom! Hundreds of millions of miles in front of Murong Yu, the void suddenly cracked. Then, a gigantic beast appeared. The head of a horse, the eyes of a lion, the back of a tiger, the body of a deer, and the scales of a dragon. The hair on its tail was like a dragon's tail, and there was meat on one corner. This was the appearance of the beast. However, this beast didn't have the ferocious aura of an ordinary beast. On the contrary, it gave Murong Yu a very comfortable aura. Although the other party had a murderous look and wanted to kill Murong Yu didn't care. This is a Qilin. Just as Murong Yu was sizing up the beast, He-Chu's exclamation sounded in his mind. I remember now. This is the cloud-soaring Qilin. Its speed is extremely fast, and it can travel through space. It's the most terrifying sacred beast in ancient times. However, it seems to have gone extinct after the Ancient War. Why would a cloud-soaring Qilin appear here? Holy Lord, you must subdue it. It'll be very beneficial to you. He-Chu was excited and encouraged Murong Yu to subdue the cloud-soaring Qilin. At this moment, after the cloud-soaring Qilin was exposed, it had already traveled through the void and flew forward. That speed made Murong Yu blush with shame. Murong Yu didn't hesitate and directly chased after it. At the same time, He-Chu also explained the Qilin. In the holy world, like the true dragon and the Phoenix clan, these could be called sacred beasts. However, above these sacred beasts, there was an even more powerful and noble sacred beast, Qilin. Qilin was the most powerful sacred beast in the holy world. There was no other. However, compared to the dragon and the Phoenix clan, Qilin was more noble and powerful. However, their numbers were really too few. Moreover, in the ancient war, the Qilin clan had all fallen. Since then, they had become history. It was also because of this that there weren't many people in the Holy World who knew about the existence of Qilin. Moreover, the most important thing was that the Qilin clan had an extremely good relationship with the human clan. Back then, because they helped the human clan, they were jointly attacked and killed by the sacred clan and other races. The cloud-soaring Qilin was a type of Qilin. It was good at speed and traveling through the void. This type of Qilin was the darling of space. Just like fish in water, it was even stronger than Murong-Yu, who controlled the space law. Moreover, the cloud-soaring Qilin's strength was extremely terrifying. When it appeared just now, Murong-Yu had already seen its realm. It was lower than Murong-Yu. It was only in the ancient sage realm. However, it had the strength of a rank 9 chaotic ancestor saint. Moreover, with its ability to appear and disappear unpredictably, an ordinary rank 9 chaotic ancestor saint would only be killed in an instant. Chapter 16:18. Swoosh. Just as Murong-Yu disappeared in pursuit of the cloud-splitting Qilin, a figure appeared out of thin air where Murong-Yu had been. It was a skinny figure covered in a black robe. His face was blurry, only revealing a pair of long eyes that flickered with a cold light. He disappeared so quickly? A low voice came out from the skinny man in black. Then he reached out his hand and grabbed a handful of air in the void. He sniffed it, then his eyes shone brightly. At the same time, he looked in the direction Murong-Yu had left. Murong-Yu, you will become mine in the end in this primeval battlefield. Chaotic celestial body, the skinny man in black laughed coldly. He took a step and disappeared on the spot, chasing Murong-Yu into the distant horizon. If there were no surprises, it was this person who had used some method to banish Murong-Yu into the primeval battlefield. Perhaps because of the primeval battlefield's uniqueness, as long as Murong-Yu entered here, he would not be able to escape. If it was outside the Saint's world, no matter how powerful he was, he could not guarantee that he would be able to obtain Murong-Yu's body. Moreover, even if he killed Murong-Yu, he might not have the time to refine Murong-Yu's body. After all, there were just too many experts in the Saint's world who coveted Murong-Yu's body. And in the primeval battlefield, with his strength, Murong-Yu would not be able to escape. Murong-Yu, who was chasing the cloud-splitting Qilin, was completely unaware of the intense danger that was rapidly approaching him. At this moment, Murong-Yu's only target was the cloud-splitting Qilin, who had banished him into the primeval battlefield. Murong-Yu was naturally furious, and he also knew that the other party did not have good intentions. But now, he did not even know who the other party was, so he naturally could not seek revenge. However, Murong-Yu had already recorded this matter in his heart. He was a vengeful person. The Qilin's speed was extremely fast. Within a few breaths of time, it had already left Murong-Yu far behind. Even its shadow could not be seen. However, ever since the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin revealed itself, it left its aura in the void. Therefore, Murong-Yu quickly chased after this aura. After a few days, Murong-Yu had already reached the depths of the ancient battlefield. At this moment, the pressure became even more terrifying. Murong-Yu could only fly at a low altitude due to the suppression. Moreover, the murderous and ancient aura grew denser and denser, and it suppressed Murong-Yu to the point that he felt an incomparable pressure in his heart. Aside from that, there would also be ferocious beasts with terrifying strength, but low cultivation bases that would appear from time to time to hunt down Murong-Yu. Of course, these ferocious beasts were not as miraculous as the cloud-splitting space Qilin. They could not turn invisible. However, their attacks were filled with strong murderous intent and murderous aura, and their combat power was extremely strong. However, as long as there were no ferocious beasts that were on the holy leaderboard, they were not much of a threat to Murong-Yu. In the beginning, Murong-Yu had killed many ferocious beasts of this level. However, later on, Murong-Yu did not want to kill them anymore. Instead, he kept them in the Hichu Luo Shu. Along the way, Murong-Yu had collected dozens of powerful ferocious beasts, further increasing his strength. If his main goal was not to hunt down the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin, Murong Yu would have collected even more ferocious beasts. The strong pressure suppressed Murong Yu to the point that he could no longer fly. At this moment, Murong Yu landed on a tall mountain. In his line of sight, the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin was at the top of another mountain, glaring at Murong Yu with murderous intent. Its eyes seemed to be spitting fire, and it seemed to be extremely furious. Perhaps it was because the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin was the king of the holy beasts, but no other ferocious beasts dared to set foot on this mountain for hundreds of millions of miles. Along the way, Murong Yu also saw many skeletons of ferocious beasts that seemed to have been killed with a single slap. It should be the work of the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin. The cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin's combat power was strong, but it should not have reached the level of an expert on the holy leaderboard. Therefore, Murong Yu estimated for a moment, then unfolded his body and charged towards the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin. On the other side, the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin also roared angrily. It stomped on the ground and used the force to dash out. It turned into a stream of light, smashing through hundreds of millions of space-time, and charged towards Murong Yu. The cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin was extremely angry at Murong Yu, a human who had chased it for days and nights. Boom! In the blink of an eye, the two of them were engaged in a fierce battle. This time, it was a battle of open swords and spears. The terrifying power exploded, causing the surrounding void to shatter continuously. The mountains were also razed to the ground continuously. Murong Yu used various combat skills and attacked the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin to the point that it could not fight back. Besides roaring continuously, the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin seemed to have no strength to fight back against Murong Yu. This made Murong Yu feel very strange, because after a round of battle, he realized that the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin's strength seemed to be weaker than before. Moreover, during the battle, the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin did not hide in the void. It seemed that the ability to hide in the void had disappeared into thin air. There must be something wrong with the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin. Murong Yu muttered to himself, but his hands did not stop at all. All kinds of big moves poured out continuously. He must suppress the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin today. Therefore, although he kept using big moves, he did not kill the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin. It was also because of this that the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin could persevere. However, as the battle continued to drag on, the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin's strength declined more and more. Originally, its strength had reached the level of an experienced rank 9 chaotic ancestor sage. Now, it had dropped to the level of a rank 1 chaotic ancestor sage. It would not take long for the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin to fall to the level of an ancestor sage. In that case, it would definitely be taken down by Murong Yu. Roar! The cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin let out an earth-shattering roar. After slapping Murong Yu away with its claw, it turned around and flew away. "Where are you going?" Murong Yu shouted. He took a step forward and chased after it. In the blink of an eye, the cloud-splitting Qilin crashed into the previous mountain, and then disappeared with a swoosh. Without the slightest hesitation, Murong Yu also charged in. The scenery in front of him changed, and Murong Yu realized that he had entered a huge cave dwelling. In front of him, the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin that had fought with him earlier was kneeling in the cave dwelling. In front of it were two Qilins that were many times larger than it. They were sitting cross-legged on the ground and exuded an extremely terrifying aura. The aura that the two Qilins exuded was definitely at the level of an expert on the holy rankings. Their strength might even be at Yu Yangjia's level or even higher. Every hair on Murong Yu's body stood on end. He immediately took out all of his treasures and raised his strength to the limit. However, he soon realized that it was just a false alarm. Although the two Qilins were powerful, they did not have any aura of life. In other words, the two Qilins were already dead. These two Qilins should be the parents of the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Qilin. Although Moroni was certain that the two Cheelans were dead, he did not dare to be careless and continued to size them up vigilantly. The experts in ancient times were all very powerful. Who knew what they had up their sleeves? Plop! Just as Moroni was sizing up the two dead Cheelans, the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan that had fought with Moroni earlier fell straight to the ground and fainted. What's going on? Moroni was stunned. Rumble, after the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan fell, waves of violent and chaotic energy constantly erupted from its body. In an instant, the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan's powerful body cracked and blood gushed out. It was extremely terrifying. Moroni even felt that the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan's spiritual aura had become violent and unstable. Moroni was shocked. He rushed to the side of the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan and began to check it out. What he saw gave him a fright. The cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan's body seemed to be in chaos. The energy that was originally condensed into a force was like a chaotic battle. It lost control in his body and ran everywhere. This was not a problem. As long as the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan controlled these forces again, there would not be much of a problem. What scared Moroni was the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan's soul. A normal soul was a heat condensed from a kind of spiritual power. It was very pure. But the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan soul was pieced together by hundreds of millions of spiritual power. Although it was powerful, those spiritual powers were independent, and no one was willing to submit to anyone. This caused the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan soul to become hundreds of millions of fragments and could not be unified. Once the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan could not control these soul fragments, they would be in chaos. Everyone wanted to devour each other and then unify. Moroni guessed that the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan soul had been like this since a long time ago. The reason why nothing had happened should be because the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan had been suppressed for a long time. However, the soul was getting stronger and stronger. If the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan strength did not follow up and become stronger, it would not be able to continue suppressing. Moroni reckoned that the reason why it was like this time should be his soul attack, making these erupt. In reality, Moroni guessed wrong. It was not his soul attack that made the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan erupt. It was that the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan's soul already reached the edge of eruption. Even without Moroni, it would completely erupt after a period of time. Moroni merely accelerated the time of eruption. At this rate, the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan would die without a doubt. Moroni did not hesitate. Grabbing the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan, he rushed into the Hichu Luo Shu. He wanted to cure the cloud-soaring, space-splitting Cheelan. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.